All right, we are now live.
Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our East Lansing City Council, our regular meeting on this Monday, August 24th. Thanks for being with us. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock.
Present.
Councilmember Bacon.
Present.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Present.
Mayor Stevens.
Here. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion for that?
Motion. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved for approval by Councilmember Babcock, seconded by Councilmember Bacon. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. That passes. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the regular City Council special meeting of August 11th.
Move.
I believe Councilmember Babcock moved approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. That is passed as well. Next item on the agenda is communications. All written communications received by the council are posted on the online agenda packet. I do this every time, but Emily, just to verify, what is the cutoff on that written communications?
4 p.m. on the day of a council meeting.
4 p.m. on the day of the council meeting. So if you submitted something to us that was after 4 p.m., it might not be on this agenda, but it would be on the next one. But if there was anything submitted before that time that didn't make it on, just let me know and we'll make sure to get it on. Sometimes people send things to individual council members, maybe intending to send it to the full group, or they send it to us individually, which might not make it on. So there are some random errors sometimes, and I'm happy to address those. Next item on the agenda is communications from the audience. We adopted a rule a while ago limiting public comment to 5 minutes. There's going to be a timer on the screen here, but if you're calling in, Emily will be giving you a warning at 30 seconds. We're going to try and answer any questions that people have. But again, that limit is 5 minutes. We're going to stick to that just to be fair to everybody. So Emily, will you please let anybody in that wants to talk?
All right, the first caller that we have is with the phone number ending in 314. You are now permitted to address council. Oops, hold on a second. Caller with the phone number ending in 314, you might need to unmute yourself.
Caller at the number ending in 314. I still see it is muted on my screen. If there's a way to get yourself unmuted, I think that would be.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Hi, this is Ray Lawson. I live at 1854 Cricket Lane in East Lansing, and I thank you very much for letting me speak, electronically and otherwise. Mayor Stevens and council members, selecting, contracting, appointing, and evaluating a city manager are probably the single most important functions of the city council in our city manager form of government. However, it appears from council meeting August 11th, the council still plans for Mayor Stevens and Councilmember Babcock to meet in separate session to discuss extension of the city manager's contract and to prepare a recommendation with no apparent plan for a performance evaluation. It would be ideal if all 5 council members could be involved in discussing how to proceed and what to be explored. The Open Meetings Act indicates one workable possibility, which is set forth in Section 8 of the Act. It permits a closed session to consider a periodic personnel evaluation if the named person requests a closed hearing. Further, the Act specifies that a closed session must be conducted during the course of an open session, and a 2/3 roll call vote of members is required to approve it. This is the way it could work. The council could vote to go into closed session for this purpose as the last agenda item of a regular meeting, therefore causing the least amount of disruption. Any resulting proposed recommendation in this closed session or sessions, if it's more than one, would need to be acted upon in a subsequent open session. Using such an approach would be much preferable to having this discussion with only 2 council members as currently planned. In closed session, all 5 council members could discuss the value of a professional level, thorough performance evaluation for the city manager and good practices for conducting it. Also, they could discuss the information about budget and comparable salary levels and a systematic and fast-based method to proceed. All council members would be maximally informed and would participate in the logic and formulation of a proposed action. It's particularly important to take the time needed for this discussion because our 2 new members have just begun their service on the council. Their insights and questions could be invaluable from the start. Furthermore, they need to be as informed as possible when they must vote on such a crucial matter. With this level of council member engagement and evidence of careful deliberation, both the spirit and letter of government transparency would be upheld. Also, trust in our local government among city employees, tax-paying public, and other residents would be enhanced. Therefore, I strongly recommend use of the closed session provision to systematically evaluate the performance of the city manager and to determine the additional information and data needed to advance a proposal for vote regarding his contract. This arrangement will help show that the council actions are well planned, factually grounded, and fair to all parties, including the city manager and the East Lansing taxpayers. Thank you for receiving my recommendations. Ray Lawson, East Lansing citizen.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. Will you let in the next caller?
Okay, the next caller will be caller with the phone number ending in 409. You are now permitted to address council.
You may have to unmute caller in the ending in 409. There you go.
Hi there. I would like to address something down under the business agenda. Should I pass now or say my piece at this time?
You can say your piece at this time as that's not a public hearing, so we're not going to be doing public comment at it. So feel free.
I'll do it. Good evening to all. Thank you for allowing me to address this meeting of the East Lansing City Council. My name is Mary Cook, and I am the owner of property located at 16736 Tower Avenue and the adjacent vacant property located to the immediate south of 16969 Tower Avenue. I operate a small equine business and often have horses grazing or being ridden on my land, which is north of Nottingham Equestrian Center. The large house currently on 16969 Tower Avenue was formerly occupied by a marijuana grower. He had crops growing in the rear garage and also in the little garage, which is the site for the parcel split. This business enterprise attracted a lot of traffic that was going well above the posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour. Traffic that would pick up dust and gravel and spook horses on my property, endangering either riders or handlers in addition to the horses. This traffic would drive to the house located at 16969 Tower Avenue, stay for a brief time, and then drive back past my property at the same rate of speed. This went on day after day, week after week, until the house was left uninhabitable due to a fire. This little rural oasis is home to a large deer, turkey, fox, and raccoon population. They have been pushed out of their former homes in the Chandler Road area, where all that student housing is now sitting. They don't understand about speed limits and the right-of-way. They just trying to live. Tower Avenue is foggy during the morning commute time, and the foggy conditions and the resident wildlife can be a deadly combination. One additional house at the end of this road potentially can add a lot of additional traffic. Additional traffic means more opportunity for tragedy to strike in the form of an accident between cars and wildlife or equines. Yes, one house can generate a lot of additional traffic, as we have seen, not just during the construction phase, but all the visitors in the future. We're already dealing with people looking for that dog park on Chandler Road, and also those drivers who come down Tower Avenue believing that a dead-end sign doesn't apply to them. Don't make us deal with more traffic issues. Safety of both animals and humans must be considered. My property happens to be a split parcel similar in shape to 16969 Tower. It has been split for decades. When you drive by, you wouldn't be able to tell visually that it's actually two parcels and it has two numbers. The reason is that one person has always owned them together, giving them a visual continuity. Since they're split, they have always been sold together, and when I sell my land many, many years in the future, I will sell them together. If the property located at 16969 Tower Avenue is split into two parcels, there will be no visual continuity. There will be a large parcel containing a big house and outbuildings on a piece of land shaped like the number 7. Then next door to my land will be a little square lot of only 0.065 acres and a little house on it. It will give the neighborhood a choppy, inconsistent look. I think that such a small house on such a small lot on a gravel road with my electric fence on their immediate south and any farming and equine-related smells will certainly limit any potential purchasers, if there are any interested parties at all. Once the parcel is split and the house is built, the damage is done. The appearance of this rural neighborhood is forever changed to be visually unappealing and inharmonious. I urge the City Council to reconsider this proposed parcel split and do not allow it today or in the future. The additional traffic that will be generated by the proposed parcel split and the subsequent building of another residence and the danger to the animals that call this area their home, both wild and domestic, and their handlers and riders must be paramount. Safety of the resident should be, and really must be, a key issue in all decisions made by this council. Also consider the affront to the visual continuity of our little rural area with such dissimilar lot and house sizes. Do not approve this parcel split into two parcels. Do not approve a parcel split into any number of pieces.
Remaining.
Thank you for your consideration. I urge you not to approve this parcel split. May God bless the decision-making of the City Council. May God bless America, both today and always. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or anything they wanted to ask the owner or any responses? Okay. Emily, would you mind letting in the next caller? Thank you for calling in.
Okay, caller with the phone number ending in 534, you are now permitted to address council. You might need to unmute yourself.
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, this is Ann Hill at 685 Buteo. I'd like to comment on tonight's agenda item 5.3 regarding a lot split of 16696 Tower Avenue. I am opposed to the lot split. This property is located in a very obscure section of the northeast area of East Lansing. It's impossible to access without first going through Meridian Township and then Bath Township. One of the bordering property owners runs a sod farm that inside runs a close second to the amount of acreage that MSU owns that is inside the city of East Lansing. The sod farm owner not only pays property taxes, but now is subject to the recent approved income taxes. A second property owner with adjacent acreage runs an equestrian operation. It has been alleged by at least one of the adjacent property owners that a marijuana operation previously operated there, and local public safety officials were aware, but nothing was done to stop it. Despite the obscure location, since they are in the city of East Lansing, all property owners have an equal right to the protection from the city's public safety team. This property at 16696 Tower Avenue was purchased in 2005 for $115,000. A house was built on it, and a couple of years ago, the house caught on fire and sustained enough damage to make it uninhabitable. The property was sold in November of 2019 for $100,000. Within 4 months, that same property was sold for $118,000. A profit of $18,000 in 4 months seems exceptional. Richard and Nathan Hubble were the purchasers of the property in February of this year, 2020, and restored the house to an inhabitable condition, and has since put the property on the market for $318,000, $200,000 above the purchase price within a 6-month time period. Even after deducting the costs that they would have incurred for restoring this property, the profit margin of this transaction is even more exceptional than the one before it. There are very few properties that can turn that kind of a profit in such a short period of time, except perhaps the property on Merritt Road that was sold on eBay. Regardless, it is clear that the intent by these owners is not to be long-term owner and contributor to the surrounding area, but for profit seeking only. At a recent city council meeting, the former mayor shared that an altercation had occurred over the weekend between a pickleball club and a soccer team over who rightfully had access to the pickleball courts at that time. According to the former mayor, the pickleball player boasted that they paid more in property taxes than a player on the soccer team. This altercation over a public park court resulted in the city incurring the cost of assigning a city employee to be on the premises on the weekends and evenings, our taxpayer dollars at work. Equal protection under the law would mean that the property owners on Tower Avenue should expect the same level of response from public safety. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the concerns already articulated by the adjacent property owners came to fruition and an illegal marijuana operation eventually developed there. While I'm not a proponent of marijuana operations in the city of East Lansing, it is what has been passed by council. I do believe in equal protection under the law, and any current or future legal marijuana enterprises that follow the rules established by LARA should be expected to be treated equally. This means that in the event of a reported concern, city public safety resources would need to be dispatched to not only protect the rights of the property owners on Tower Avenue, but also the rights of the other marijuana enterprises to operate legally in East Lansing as well. During the city council meeting, whereby 3 approved medical marijuana retail entities were approved to sell recreational marijuana, I heard all 3 companies state that they were working to identify nonprofit organizations to which they could donate the specified percentage of their revenue as required by LARA. As a creative solution to this situation, I wonder if an arrangement could be made whereby these marijuana retail entities could contribute funds by which this property could be purchased and deeded to the nonprofit Nottingham Farms Nature Nook or something similar. Assuming all parties bought in, a solution of this type would be a win for all entities. Safety for the children and the adults that ride the ponies and horses, safety for the various types of wildlife in this area, reduced demand and subsequent cost on the city's public safety team,
You have
and
30
equitable
seconds
treatment
remaining.
under the law for all. It is because of all this that I respectfully request that council consider the totality of this situation and impact and not approve the lot split for 16696 Tower Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments towards the caller? All right. Oh, Lisa, do you have something?
Oh, I just want to say I will have questions when we get to the item, and
Okay.
they'll be particularly for Mr. Haywood.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Emily, could we let in the next caller if we do have one?
Okay, caller with the phone number ending in 347, you are now permitted to address council.
Caller ending in 347, I believe you're still muted. If you hit unmute on your phone or any device, then you should be able to speak. I'm going to just say, well, that one more time. Caller with a number ending in 347, you appear to be muted on our screen, not by us, but by your own device. So if you would hit unmute on your device, you should be able to speak to the council. All right. If I get a message or an email saying that there was an issue with that, I will let this person speak. Just remember.
Aaron, is it sometimes *6 on a phone if they don't have a mute button, if they're just using the telephone?
Okay.
Am I remembering that correctly?
I honestly, I don't know. I am generally just know that the mute button is what is working, but
Yep,
if *6 works, sorry,
If
go
they
ahead.
press *6, it should be able to unmute.
Okay. Caller ending in number 347, if you press *6 as well. Okay. Emily, would you mind moving on to the next person? If I get an email or something saying that they couldn't unmute, then I'll let them speak at a later time in the agenda.
That was our last caller.
Okay, awesome. Really quickly, I'm going to just do something that I've been doing for every meeting. I'm just going to read off the call-in number, just because we've, we have a lot of public comment, and it's all good things, and I just want to make sure that people can call in if they want to. So the call-in phone number is 312-626-6799. Again, that number is 312-626-6799. And then the meeting ID is 817-5965-0710. Again, that meeting ID is 817-5965-0710. All right. And Emily, would you mind letting that caller back in one more time? I'm gonna just see if we can do.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, caller with the phone number ending in 347, you are now permitted to address council. If you could unmute, please.
You can press *6. Caller with the number ending in 347. Again, press *6 and you should be able to speak. One more time, just for last, for the sake of it, if you hit *6 or you hit the unmute button, you should be able to speak. Okay. Emily, did we have anybody else call in?
Nope.
All right, great. Then I will move on to our next part of the agenda, which is communications from the mayor and council members. I will start with what is on my screen and start off with Councilmember Bacon.
Aaron, could you repeat that?
This is communications from mayor and council members. So anything you would like to say to the community, whether it be on or off the agenda, you can address that now. If you don't have comments, you can pass.
Gotcha. I'll pass. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Watson.
Pass.
Wonderful. Mayor Pro Tem. All right, you're on my left.
I don't have a lot to say tonight, but I did want to compliment you and our city manager and our acting police chief, Steve Gonzalez, for the boots on the ground attitude that you've taken towards mask enforcement downtown. I appreciate that. I think that that level of outreach is probably what it's going to take to make some headway on that. So well done.
Thank you. And I'm sure that the city manager and deputy chief share the exact same opinion. Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. Also, it's good we have our mask ambassadors out and deployed. It seems to come and go in waves. Some days when you're in the business district, you see everybody wearing masks and they're very cooperative. And some days, not so much. As the mayor said a few weeks ago, this is not a big ask and we're all in this together. You don't know who's standing next to you who might be or be very close to someone who's medically compromised. We want to get everything back on kilter as quickly as possible. I never thought I'd say it, but yes, I miss football too. And I was the kid picked last for every team. So if I miss football, we all miss football. But we're only going to get there if we bring this virus under control. And we're only going to do that if we all comply. So another plea, I don't like wearing them either. I totally understand, but let's knuckle down and get through this and come out on the other side. I also want to say I continue my practice of reading all the emails. I apologize, I haven't been as responsive, but for Mr. Vlassen, for Ms. Hill, Ms. Cook, I read all of your emails today and I'm taking separate issues, but I'm taking them all into consideration, as I'm sure we all are. So we're not going to take this meeting to 11:30, so I'm going to put a sock in it and hand it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I have a few items that I'd like to comment on. This is one of the more difficult parts of the job, and I think that former mayors have done it very well, but I think it's important to do. So we lost a really great community member, Brett Henderson, over the past, I believe, couple of weeks here. And so, both very active in the community, also very active in the Lansing state government scene. I'm sure most people on council have, got an email or a call from him regarding marijuana retail, different issues that have come up with that. And, I just wanted to say that, my heart is with their family right now, a very, very involved family in East Lansing, very, very unfortunate to hear. So I'm very, very sad to hear that. And my heart goes out to them. The second thing is, unfortunately, under the same vein, you'll see a resolution on our agenda honoring the life and legacy of James Butler III. James Butler III was somebody commonly known as the godfather of Lansing. To get that type of title is not something that you just do because you served on a couple of commissions. You do because you're the person that people turn to. There was a visitation that was mask wearing and distant, and Rashawn Butler, who's an incredible person, asked me to speak. And what I generally said, because I didn't have as many experiences with him as some other folks, is that being the godfather of Lansing and really this entire area, means that they were the role model to my role models. When I think about people like Elaine Hardy, when I think about people like, Virg Bernero, folks that I've relied on in the past, even Debbie Stabenow, that I've called on and asked questions and heard about things, they all called on him, for advice and for so much more. And I know that one of our council members has served with him. He's the longest serving member of the MLK Commission. I would go through everything that he's done, but we would actually be here until 11:30. I just want to say, I'm glad we're passing this resolution. We actually have language in there that the original copy is going to be presented to the family, but truly a giant in this area and in this community. And very, very sad to see the passing of this individual, but that legacy lives on. And if we're having a conversation about parks and renaming and some other things, so East Lansing resident for many, many years, did a lot of great things. And this is one thing that I commented just about being that title, having the Godfather of Lansing title. I think it was just always a call to service for him, because, whether, he was a leader in business or in the community, he still served. He just recently served on our Hannah Community Center advisory board. And he was on the financial health team. He was on so many different things to help people and to help the city. So that's the kind of person that he was. And my heart goes out to Rashawn and their entire family. So those are the things that I'm not the best at, but I wanted to give some mention of those. So my next thing is a little bit on COVID and kind of the conversations that we've had. And as some of you guys know, myself, city manager, deputy chief, and just me even solo sometimes have gone out into the community talking to some students and some folks that have been coming back into East Lansing. I'd just like to say, people are generally receptive when you come up and you talk to them. And we've gotten some good reactions, but I will say that I'm imagining there's going to be an uptick in this behavior. More people are moving in. I think that people are distancing the best they can in certain situations. You see situations where, they might actually still be meeting the threshold, right? It's under 25 people, they're outside, but even then they're still a little bit close together, right? People aren't wearing masks as much, and those can still be risky situations. And so my message to people is just think about that every single time you're getting together. Even if you're within the law, technically, there are still risks that can occur. And, when we go out and we talk to folks, that is really what we're informing people about. And I just need to give a kudos to our public safety team that's been going out and talking to people, making sure people are safe, and encouraging that responsible behavior. And then I have something to say that's a little bit less positive. We still get people that tell us, to F off, and I'm not going to say the actual word, but to F off when we, explain you got to wear a mask here. When you're next to a few people, you really should be distancing if you're not in the same household, that kind of thing. And to that, I just got to say, these are folks that are in my generation. And I really, really want to be able to say, and I do say that this is the generation that cares. This is the generation that's looking towards the future and wants everybody to succeed. But every time somebody says something like that to me, I get a little bit more worried. And so my message to those people is we need to be better. We absolutely need to be better. We can put laws into place. We can set expectations, But at the end of the day, it's about personal responsibility. If you're not taking that responsibility seriously, then you're being a pretty dang bad representative for our generation. And so that's my message. Is it's not even close to a majority of people that say things like that. But when those people do, you know, they're putting other people at risk. And so that's a big issue. And you know, I'm going to be continuing going out there. Our teams, you know, whether it's our downtown ambassadors, whether it's our public safety folks, they're going to be encouraging good behavior. And I think that we're getting some really good reception from the vast majority of people. But those one or two, you know, that still puts people at risk. So that's my message out there. I believe, you know, I just got a text and an email from the individual that was trying to call earlier. Emily, do we have a resolution to that so we can let them speak in?
All right, it looks like we do have one more caller. I'm gonna go back to the caller with the phone number ending in 347 to see if that phone number works again. Caller
Yeah.
with the phone number ending in 347, you're now permitted to address council. All right,
All right.
it looks like they are still muted. Caller with the phone number ending in 347, if you could unmute.
Press *6 if you can hear me.
All right, we do have one additional phone number that did call in.
That's okay. Yeah, let them in.
All right, phone number ending in 064, you are now permitted to address council. You'll just need to unmute.
And I believe you are on.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yep, Joan Johnson. I'm wondering if I can address an issue. I wasn't able to get on your call early enough.
Yep, absolutely.
Regarding
You have 5 minutes starting right about now.
Okay, I sent in some information today to the council by email. My name's Joan Johnson. We have the property to the farm property to the west and north of the property that is requesting the split. And there's been some concern over ownership of that. I want to call it a gravel surface because that's the way it's referred to in the site survey that was done in 2007 that is the most recent attachment I sent to council. Because it has been suggested it's not necessarily a road. Prior to that, and in addition, it was owned by our family farm up until a previous owner of that parcel that's asking it to be split was requesting, understood he was landlocked and wanted to do something about it. So we offered to buy that right of way on that gravel surface. And it looks like he accepted it. However, nothing was signed as far as our agreement. That's what I sent you from Foster Swift. So that's a little bit vague as far as ownership of that parcel, but it looks to me like he did buy 33 feet of it and donated it, or maybe put it in East Lansing's name. But then there's another concern about the road in front of the property, the rest of the road. In other words, the road in front, or the gravel surface in front of Mary Cook's property. So that still is owned by our farm, Helmick-Sutton. And so my concern is that you're making a decision to further complicate this whole land situation before that situation is cleared up on ownership and right of way. And I'm requesting that that be cleared up and that the owner that's asking this split bring that to your attention prior to making that decision or that vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments towards the caller? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move us on to the city manager's report. Thank you very much for calling in.
No report this evening. I've got a couple of lengthy presentations. I'll save our time for that.
Sounds good. City attorney is not present at this meeting, so we will move on to our special presentation of financial updates. And I'll just put this out there now. If we could have those presentations, I'll just put on the agenda online once we're through. That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so tonight we're going to do a presentation on the financial impact of COVID-19. Obviously, this has been a question from council. I think it's actually right now timely for us to have that presentation because we finished our final quarter of last year. And I think we have enough good information now to give a pretty good snapshot of what the city's finances are looking like. And at this point, I can say that there is not any, large financial problems for us at this point, and we'll go through the presentation. There's also some pretty good news that I'll be able to share as well. This is a pretty fluid situation. We're just getting to the end of our year-end closing from last year, so there's still some information coming out. We actually just got some updated information on constitutional revenue sharing as late as this afternoon that I'll share. So pretty fluid situation, but like I said, I think we have some good information to share that'll give us some pretty good insights. If we could switch to the first page. So let's start back at planned use of fund balance because we're talking about the general fund here for fiscal year 2020. Fiscal year 2020 ended June 30th. So this is the fiscal year that just ended. Obviously, COVID has really greatly impacted the final quarter of fiscal year 2020. It started sort of March 15th, I guess you could say, right around there. But really, it would be the final 3 months that were greatly impacted. And that's the months that actually came through. And now, of course, we're looking at the entire year end, not just the final 3 months. When we first had an adopted budget way back when, about 18 months ago, or about 14 months ago, we had an adopted budget that showed a use of fund balance of about $14,000. That's the number right at the top left-hand column. And the reason for that was we presented a budget that had no use of fund balance, but there were a couple of items at the end, some small items that council wanted to put in, and rather than go back and unravel the budget, we just had a planned use of fund balance. And what I would say about that is we always tend to overperform, meaning that we spend less than we say we're going to spend. A budget isn't necessarily saying you're going to spend this amount. It says you can spend up to this amount. And of course, we always try to increase performance or do better. And then we use that savings for long-term financial issues. If you look at the past 9 years when I was city manager, we've been able to set aside about $20 million for legacy costs, for infrastructure, and for additional things that we've needed. So we've been pretty successful at that, about setting money aside and managing well during tough times. By October, we had an amendment to change that budget in terms of about a $767,000 use of fund balance. So this again is a planned use of fund balance. We're trying to work on priorities because our financial situation from the prior year end was rather good. We felt we wanted to make a supplemental payment of about $500,000. We also, from the budget time, offered a 2% increase. During bargaining, we decided a 3% increase was appropriate, and that was the $158,000 union negotiated increase. And then some additional encumbrances for rollovers, housing study, EHOP funding. So these were additional priorities that we wanted to fund and council wanted us to fund. So we said we would be spending just over $750,000 at year end, again, mostly all planned use of fund balance. In June, when COVID struck, we did an amendment and sort of looked at the year end and thought, where are we going to end? And at that point, we came up with just over $1 million use of fund balance. So still, considering where we were going to be in October, not bad. There were some things to the good here. Property taxes came in a little bit better than expected. Income tax, and I'll talk about that, came in a little better than expected. But things came out the other direction too. We had some retirements not budgeted, things like that. So overall, a little over $1 million spending. Considering the situation, again, not a bad result. As we come to year end now and actually see the quarter and the full year, we see a projected use of fund balance of $625,000, which we can actually note is less than we thought we would spend back in October through the planned use of fund balance prior to COVID. So that really is an excellent result. And I just heard today, because our constitutional revenue sharing estimate came in, $100,000 better than expected, I would expect it will be closer to about $500,000 use of fund balance, which really is a very good result considering the financial situation with COVID. And it says a lot to the steps we've taken to mitigate some of the losses. And we'll talk about that in a bit. If you want to switch to the next slide, please. So these are some of the actions we've taken during COVID from all the way from the start. We've been on webinars and conference calls with the Michigan Municipal League. Our lobbyist has convened a number of calls with policy stakeholders from the state. And we've also been on calls from the state of Michigan, really trying to get a sense of what the state's finances are looking like and trying to glean that information as early as possible. We also participated early on with the state of Michigan's work share program. I think we were pretty aggressive with that in getting a number of employees to participate, and also in terms of aggressive in terms of the number of hours that we reduced our employees' time. And that actually resulted in a greater savings for the city. We see over an 8-week period, $322,000 of savings to the city from that work share program. And largely, as we know from work share, that the employees really, the majority of that wage was made up in terms of the work share program. So the employees were not particularly harmed by that program. Then we get to a bit of a tougher program, which was the reduction of contingent staffing. When we saw that COVID was going to have an extended period of closure, there were a number of programs that we were not going to be continuing at that point. Those, you could think of them, the 2 pools that we run, the before and after care program for childcare, some of our sports and athletic programs, library pages because the library was closed. And those were positions that were temporarily laid off due to an extended shutdown of those programs. So that resulted in money not spent. So we're not making revenue from the pool, but we also limited the cost because we did not rehire or hire all of those staff members. So that was a net savings as well. We also, of course, managed expenditures and reprioritized projects. I'll talk more about that in terms of some of the going forward projects under strategic priorities. And then we researched and applied for various grants from the federal and state government, and also maximized contributions from regional sponsors. If you want to switch to the next page. So this speaks about some of the programs that we've been able to apply for. Some of these dollars are not necessarily dollars coming back to the city, and I'll hit upon those. The first one is a very big program, Public Safety and Health Payroll Reimbursement Program to the state. Essentially, we were able to reimburse for public safety wages for 2 months. There may be a second round of that into June and July, which will help last year's period, but also this fiscal year as well. And that's obviously a very significant amount at almost $1.6 million. Notification of that is pending by the end of September. The good news here is that we were able to close the fiscal year, I said about $500,000 use of fund balance. This money will reimburse expenses that were spent last fiscal year, but the money will come to the city this fiscal year, thereby helping to raise this fiscal year to a better level and sort of insulating us against a further fall this year. So that is potentially good news. Don't know if we're getting $1.6 million. We could get something less than that, but it certainly is a good opportunity for us to recover some of those costs. Michigan Health Endowment Fund, Healthy Aging. This is a grant that would be administered by MSU. It would not bring $500,000 to us. That would be administered by MSU, and it would provide for some services for us to address seniors in isolation. There are a number of other smaller programs that also address that issue that you'll see later on, where we get some money for staffing for addressing seniors in isolation. Obviously, with our centers closed and people being at home, isolation for seniors is a significant issue, and we're working to address that through our senior program with these grants. Center for Secure and Modern Elections, we asked for a grant of up to $315,000. That's to address issues due to COVID. We may get some number less than that, and that's for equipment and for potentially the satellite office that we would be staffing. CDBG CV, that's the COVID program providing assistance to housing assistance and business support, up to $289,000. That was awarded. Additional revenue sharing. The additional revenue sharing, state revenue sharing, basically is a program to reimburse state revenue sharing through CARES dollars. Our estimate is that we'll receive $128,000 additional money for that. And that will be coming again in this fiscal year, not last fiscal year. And then we also participate in the First Responder Hazard Pay Program, paying people $1,000 per employee. That money is only spent if we receive it. Next slide, please. We have a number of situations where the child care program, because the program had to stop and then start up again now, where we've applied for assistance to keep that program viable. We've received $95,000 to date, and that grant program is ongoing. So we're still applying for grants. We actually have a pared back program up and running at this point, being run at the community center. Coronavirus emergency supplemental funding, a bit of a lesser amount for police, for supplies and for equipment. Coronavirus emergency funding for 54B. This is for equipment for running more of a remote court, $28,000 for equipment primarily. Again, I see an AARP national grant, $28,000 addressing seniors in isolation. Part of that is going to MSU for administration. And then we see CARES Act Provider Relief Fund. This really is money that was Medicare and Medicaid dollars for healthcare providers that could not be providing service during COVID or had a very reduced level of service. So this is a Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. So our ambulance as a medical provider are being provided a $25,000 reimbursement for that. And then FEMA grants really are a catch-all at the end of this process. FEMA grants are kind of the last dollars you want to apply for. So if there's money that wasn't reimbursed and under other programs, but it was for the emergency response, that may be eligible at a later date. So we'll be compiling that during the entire period of the emergency, and then we'll be sending that in for potential reimbursement. That will be reimbursement that could come 2 to 3 years from now. So that's more of a long-term solution, but again, not money you're necessarily counting on, but could be reimbursed in the future. Next slide, please. Next, we have a number of smaller grants that are very generously supplied to keep our sort of arts programs viable. Jackson National Life was the main title sponsor for our virtual art festival. Jackson National Life also assisted with All of Us Express Children's Theater. Michigan Hope grant for the library staffing, $5,000. And then we see a couple of smaller ones for MCA, CA for All of Us Express Children's as well. So again, staff have been active in applying for grants and reaching out for money to support those initiatives. Next slide, please. So these are things that we have provided, meaning we, the city as an organization, obviously many of them through council's efforts and council's initiative, supporting our community and supporting individuals. Waiver of restaurant and entertainment licenses, $80,000. That was from last fiscal year. So you could see that that was a direct amount that the city had to forego last year in order to support businesses. $175,000 for DDA small business relief. That would have been from the DDA's funds, not directly the city, but the DDA as a ally of the city, I guess I would say. Human Service Agency support, $10,000. That was to assist people who were experiencing homelessness. And it was as soon as COVID began, we saw the need for providing that money to our homeless shelters in the region. Free parking in downtown, transitioning to longer grace period, obviously again in support of our businesses, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to come down and frequent our businesses. As council knows, open air dining, we did that to be able to provide opportunities for our residents to come downtown and as safely as possible, be customers of our restaurants and dine downtown. I think that that was a very successful thing that was able to do for our businesses and supportive of our businesses as well. But there was some cost to the city, but I think it was well worth it. Enhanced online options, we talk about that during strategic priorities, but yard waste stickers, residential parking permits, different things that we're doing to be able to reach out to our customers. And if they don't want to be able to come in because if they have a concern about their health, certainly we want to be able to provide greater services to our residents. Library curbside services, people can drive up and get their books delivered to them sort of touchless and not have to have any sort of, not go without their library services during that time. So that's a great program. And then of course, if you've been to City Hall, you see the PPE, the barriers, all the protocols in place to protect employees and our residents who are coming in and the screening that's in place. In process, $290,000 of community development block grant housing support. That's going to be talked about in the next presentation. Signage downtown. We've put a lot of signage downtown to help promote the safe use of downtown with people wearing masks. So that's, again, encouraging the right behavior. And then hiring and training downtown ambassadors that are down there working currently. So that's another great program. I mean, currently not today, but they started this past weekend. Next slide, please. So moving forward, there are a number of things, obviously, we're waiting for sort of milestones, I guess, to say what are the potential challenges that we're going to be experiencing this fiscal year. So that's what I look at as these are sort of the big drivers of potential risk. Additional revenue sharing, consensus hearing August 24, which I just mentioned. Great news in terms of the fall not being as far as expected. Therefore, the city getting more money from last year, that $100,000, and hopefully not being as devastating into this current year. Constitutional amount depending on sales tax, we know that. And then statutory rate, statutory subject to appropriations. But obviously, if the state as overall is doing better, hopefully there's more opportunity for us to benefit from state appropriation as well. Then income tax. I'm going to talk a little bit about income tax. We've got some good news on income tax for last year, and I think that will certainly spill into this year. Obviously, for this fiscal year, we have a situation where a lot of people will, if they were working for instance, at the university, and now they're working from home, they may be paying taxes now, but those taxes might be going back to the individual in terms of a refund because they're not physically working in the city at this point. So I think that this year presents a threat in terms of what the income tax will look like in terms of refunds for people not working. And then obviously the thing here for us is that the income tax, unless it falls precipitously far, which when you see the next couple of slides, you'll get a sense of it, the impact is really to long-term financial progress. It's working on infrastructure issues, it's working on legacy cost issues. If the income tax were to fall several $1 million for this fiscal year, I mean, in this income tax year, that is really not going to change the city's fortunes in the short term. It's not going to make us unable to provide services at this point. It's more going to impact how we provide, how we're able to make progress on these long-term financial situations. And once you see the slide at the end, I think you'll have a sense that gives us a little bit of comfort on that issue. And then some of the funds that are particularly challenged, I think, and we all understand this, that we have to watch closely is parking and parks and recreation. And these are, I mean, primarily simply because parks and recreation may have programs that are not being offered at this point. So the buildings are essentially closed. We're not doing the sports. We're not doing as much, though we've started again the before and after. And we're not doing the pool and all of those sorts of things that make some revenue. But we've also pared back the operations to help mitigate cost. Again, parking, if people are not coming downtown in high numbers, then that could impact parking over time. So these are areas that we have to monitor closely as we move forward. Next slide, please. Now I get into a bit of, I guess I would say, unexpected good news. So people may know that when we had the income tax study way back when, 3-4 years ago now, we actually thought that the income tax would create about a $10 million amount for the city. That would be offset by a $5 million property tax reimbursement, if you will. So the city would net $5 million. It was actually about 10.6 million, I believe, but that left money for administration of the income tax as well. As soon as the income tax started, you can see on the right-hand side, there's that column with the bars going up. You'll look at January, and you'll see that first bar in January when we collected income tax was pretty low. And at that point, we had to sort of come up with sort of an estimate for the budget. And we had to use what we thought was a pretty conservative estimate at that point. So then we came in with a number, I believe, of $9 million. And again, that was based on a very small amount of data. And as the year has gone on, we felt more and more comfortable that the income tax would in fact produce more than $9 million. And at the end here, end analysis 2019, we see we're about $14 million for the income tax for 2019. That is excellent news. What happened was a lot of people paid late with their returns, which is fine. It's the first year and you could expect that. But really, I think at this point, the income tax has performed exceptionally well for 2019. Now, what that means for 2020 is that the city will we have much further to fall in order for it to not really damage the city in terms of the future finance of the city. You could imagine that a $2 to $3 million fall in income tax is really going to put us back to where we thought we would be. So, and again, unless we get to the numbers of $5.5, $6.5, $7 million, it's not going to change the current operations and fortunes of the city. It more is limiting our ability to address these long-term infrastructure and pension obligations. But I think I'm rather comforted by the fact that the 2019 numbers were so good that actually from last year gives us more money to work on activities this next year regardless. So overall, it's great news. This year, 2020, we have to watch with some caution and see what the impact of COVID has been in terms of people telecommuting, people from working from home, and having businesses having less payroll. That will impact it, but obviously, again, we can have some fall off in that and still have it not be cataclysmic for the city. Next slide. So what it says here is that the first 3 months of COVID ending fiscal year 2020 is we've taken a lot of the right steps and the results show extremely stable. 2020 fiscal year ended well. We have a fund balance that's healthy at about 15%, just under perhaps. And some of that we used over the past years was again working on priorities. It was purposeful use of fund balance to work on priorities as we have in the past. 2021 is going to be more challenging, but again, we have a lot of indicators that I think mitigate the fact that it will cause a service reduction. And certainly at this point, I would say that it is not the time for any drastic actions because it's simply not justified at this point. But we have to consider and manage and monitor closely. That's what we've done for the past 15 years and certainly the last 9 years that I've been manager, is we've managed closely. We watch the dollars and then we do better than expected and we're able to make progress on things. And certainly, again, if COVID is able to be resolved in the coming 6 months, 8 months, as all of us hope, that this will be a 1 year, significant challenge for the city, but certainly surmountable. If this goes beyond that, all of us understand that this is going to be a new challenge for us and we're going to have to make determinations about program offerings and what makes sense and what doesn't. But again, none of us have the crystal ball at this point. But at this point, I would say that the directors, our employees, all of us have taken the steps at this point to help mitigate those challenges, applying for the grants, taking the staffing steps we need to in order to keep the city financially strong moving forward, even through what will be a difficult time. With that, I can certainly take any questions council has, or we can move to the next presentation.
So really quickly, if I could just get the full screen of folks so I can see. I do have a number of questions, but I will let other council members go first before I take it over. Councilmember Bacon, please.
George, I was just looking at when was the cutoff for taxation payments for 2020? And did we see a bounce at the cutoff mark, seeing that some people were late to get into the taxation process from last year and that kind of thing? Is there a bounce in that? Was it June or when was the actual?
Yeah, so we're still collecting returns, because obviously the tax deadline was delayed. So is that what you're referring to? Yes.
Yeah, I've just seen if that showed as a bounce from last year, because there was some people getting on to payroll late and figuring out how to do it.
It certainly did. And I think that's that $2.5 million that I mentioned, where people did not make the payments during the year. Then they sent their returns and they had very significant payments. So I think that really explains why we went from a pretty good estimate to up $2.5 million. If you can go back to that slide a second with the income tax, Emily, can you do that?
Yes, just give me 1 second here.
No problem. Sorry, you probably had the next presentation queued up and I'm messing up your process here.
Sorry, Emily.
That's okay. Hold on 1 second. Let's see.
Go back one slide just. Okay, can you point, Emily? No, that was it. That was the slide. That's it. So you can see at the end of 19 that huge bar at the end really is the payments made at the end of the year with returns. So that's kind of the good news returns at the bottom. You can see that light blue bar that goes way up high. That really is people who may not have made the payments all along through the year, and it kind of took us pleasantly by surprise, I guess I would say. But that's all still, I mean, we're still paying returns. You know, we still have refunds to go out. So this is still a work in progress, but certainly you're much better off being in a situation where you're starting from 14 million with returns rather than 10.5 or 11 million from returns, right?
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other council members have questions? Ron, if you had more questions, please feel free to chime in and ask before I get in mine.
I have a question. This is Dana. I have a question.
Absolutely.
So George, you talked about the healthy aging grant, and it just didn't say like a deadline. It said pending, but it just didn't have a date. And I was just wondering if you knew a date for that one.
I don't. I can get that for you from Kelly Arndt and figure out when that's coming in,
Okay.
or when we'd expect to know that.
All right. And I was curious, like, are we talking more about how to get money outside of the parking? Like, is it a good time to start talking and thinking about how we can make up for the possibility of lost revenue?
Yeah, I've actually had conversations with the director, Tom Fehrenbach, about thinking about ways to incentivize different parking structures. So they're thinking about that. I don't think they have any proposals at this point, because I think we were up until last week expecting campus to be open. So I think that this is kind of a new normal for us, but I think we also have to see what the parking utilization looks like over the coming weeks. But certainly I would be expecting them to come back. You know, if it's more housing, more licenses, I mean, more long-term rentals for people who are living near the downtown, because you'll have less transient parkers, all those sorts of things. I'm certain they'll be considering. We also have the parking task force, which may be looking at this as well.
Okay.
Any other council members? Jesse?
I just had a comment. I think George, you might have a better way of summing this up than I do, but I think there might be a misconception about, I mean, I'm sure that there's actually a misconception about how municipal finances work. We had our little, review with the auditors this week. And I think one thing that is really critical for the residents of East Lansing to understand, I think this presentation was probably quite reassuring, but I think that there might be a perception that if we run out of money, we will go get more money, like, charge it basically. And like legally, we are not allowed to do that, right? So when we talk about the city's money, we're really talking about our residents' money, and we are not allowed to go into debt on their behalf without their permission, right? So I think, yes, the budget is changing. Yes, money's coming from different places. Yes, some things are not covering their costs where they used to be, and we're shuffling money around, but we're not spending money that it's not willy-nilly. There's like not a magic charge card that we can just like charge it to if we run out of cash, right? So I just want to really clarify to our residents that that is not happening. That yet, yes, there's a significant financial change because of COVID, but it's not, I don't know. Anyway, can you sum that up better than I can?
I can. So you can't deficit spend. We can't spend more than what we have, but we can use fund balance, which is not considered deficit.
Right.
And that's why I went back and talked about the planned use of fund balance, because there it's not the city. If we were spending money on operations and we're not sustainable, then I would say that use of fund balance is a problem. But if you're maintaining healthy reserves at your planned level and you're spending it on pension payments because you don't need extra money sitting in reserve when it can be better served helping to shore up the pension plan, then that's been our process. That's what I mentioned. There's $20 million that we've been able to set aside has been sort of money that we've been able to save from the annual budget process due to positions being vacant, due to just careful management. And that's really the same thing we'll be doing from this point on, is going to be careful management, applying for the grants, not spending where we don't need to, spending less than budgeted wherever possible to be able to navigate this. You also build reserves for emergencies. And I think all of us would say at this point, a global pandemic is an emergency. Our goal still is not to use that fund balance unless it's absolutely necessary, and then to use as little as possible. I can call on Jill if Jill wants to weigh in on anything on that. Jill, did you want to jump in? Can you hear me? Can you unmute, Jill?
Yes, I believe she's an attendee, so I will let Jill in right now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep. Did you ever add to that?
No, I think you did a good job of explaining it. You know, we always have managed that way, and yes, there's a budget, but our goal is always to come in under. And then that's where, like, that first budget amendment, when George walked through, like, using $500,000 for a supplemental pension payment. Those are the times that we identify maybe what we had for savings and say, how do we want to utilize it? Do we want to replenish fund balance? Do we want to add to fund balance, or do we want to utilize it for a specific purpose? So that's kind of been our method throughout the years. And I would envision that we would continue doing it that way.
Great. Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, my question is about fund balance. And a historical note, 1929 was bad, but 1936 was worse. So my fear is that while this is a crisis can always get worse. Chalk that up to my natural Irish optimism. But when we dip into the fund balance, I know a point of pride for East Lansing has been that our fund balance has been well funded, almost to the 20% range. That's considered the upper number for a fund balance. Where will we be percentage-wise if we dip into the fund balance this way?
So at this point, I think year end, Jill's going to show a number likely at year end, putting us just under 15 or just about 15% fund balance. That's the top of council policy. Council policy calls between 8 and 15% fund balance. We always aim to shoot to keep us at the 15% or higher. You're right that when I took over as city manager, I think we were close to 8% or 9%. We moved that up to 20% through pretty careful management. And then we've been spending it on these obligations, pension obligations and so on. So, you know, at this point, I don't think we can give you a number. Our goal would be to use as little as possible, or if possible, none at all. But that's going to be wait to be seen. You know, obviously, the thing about fund balance is you have to figure out what a sustainable level is. So if we're at a situation this year where we use fund balance and we see that operations or there's an ongoing financial challenge, then we have to pare things back a little bit and make the cuts to make sure we're sustainable into the future. So that's kind of making the tweaks and steering the ship at the right time to make those modifications.
Okay. And again, if I may.
Yep.
If we reduce or even just pay the bare minimum on our pension obligations, what are the possible repercussions?
Yeah, we've always been quite a bit over the pension obligation for the past years, near years. That's what I think that our pension payment is about $8 million, and we've been trying to fund $5 million extra.
Okay.
So there's quite a ways to fall to get to the basic payment, and our goal would always be to pay over that.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Question statement to George. The housing market's one thing that does seem to be churning, and you were mentioning around property tax and that kind of thing. With the amount of churn and changing hands, is that that's going to be a positive or a plus long term on the property tax side, even with the reduction?
Our property taxes and our tax base has been growing pretty steadily in recent years. So, you know, is it possible that if this is a short-term situation that it's going to have a leveling off or a falling potentially? That could happen. Lisa was right about, you know.
I apologize. City manager, you seem to be, if you can hear me, you seem to be frozen.
I heard the words Lisa was right and the system crashed. Coincidence, I'm sure.
Maybe
Give him a second to log back in.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
I'll start moving in. Yeah, so Lisa was right that when the crisis basically hits, it's a couple of years later that the financial situation could hit. And that's what happened with the housing collapse. 2008 was the collapse our property taxes continued to go up for several years and then started to fall. So that's going to give us obviously time to see that developing, but that is depending on how deep and how challenging the situation is, this could be something that impacts our housing values several years down the road, and you have to just manage it carefully and watch it. We've had good growth. We've had good growth of new projects and new properties coming on. So, it's just something we have to watch.
Yeah, I'm just stating that it appeared to be a contrary indicator at this time. It's the one, it seems to be, no one seems deterred.
We're also so new into this that, I think property values were still pretty good. And we still hear that houses are selling very well in East Lansing. So you have to have probably more data on that.
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else have any other questions before I get into mine? Wonderful. So I have a few questions. The first thing that I wanted to know is if we could get something specific on a council agenda in the future in terms of our Parks and Rec department and our parking budget. I just want to understand a little bit further, like what the impact of this has been. I know that there have been, when you talk about contingent workers, you are talking about some areas in Parks and Rec as well. And I want a clearer picture of what that has been like. I know that it's, both of those areas are places that we're looking into, but if we could get, even something like what you just did, but for those funds, and then, and just because I know that, maybe fund balance is used to make things whole, or like maybe increased returns from the state or our income tax, and income tax wouldn't be offsetting, but like, other things might be offsetting these costs, but just want to know a little bit more in depth on those two funds.
Sure.
My next thing is on contingent workers. We had talked about the actual step that was taken to, cut those hours. Are there plans to reinstitute those hours? Are we, looking at incurring those costs again? I'm just trying to understand.
Yes, some of the people were hired. We had people who were laid off because the pools didn't open or pools closed because facilities didn't open. And those people, a number of people were offered jobs, for instance, as our downtown open dining people. Those are the staff people we hired. And then we hired them again to work in the ambassador program. That's obviously a dozen, 10 in that range. But there's lots of people. These are jobs that we will rehire when the service is back in operation, because if there's not a program, you don't have the staff around. But we've, for instance, hired back before and after care people, because like I said, we're running, I believe, a 40-person summer camp, if you will, for childcare at the Hannah Center. So it'll just be when the service is up and running, then we would hire them back. For instance, our parking ambassadors were hired back. I believe at this point, all of them. I have to check to see how many were employed prior to COVID, but because now the parking system's back open and operational, we need parking ambassadors again. Okay. And same for the library. When the library opens, they'll look to reemploy library pages and the like.
Yeah, if we could just get some kind of council update on that, whether it's an email form or anything like that, just before it happens. I just think it's a conversation piece that I just never have known really the end of, right? We've talked about what happened, but not necessarily what's going to result from it. So you touched on this too, but one of my biggest concerns, of course, is income tax in terms of people working from home, not actually being within the city when they're doing that. And I had a conversation with the finance director about this, and, really, we don't know what that impact is going to be. I am optimistic of the fact that we got this number back this year. I don't imagine that it will be the same next year. Are there, when do we start to have indications? When do we start to know things further on what the impact is going to be of folks working at home? Because I do imagine it's going to be a thing for a good amount of time here.
I think we'll know definitively at the end of the year when people file their taxes. That's going to be the definitive answer. But I think that at this point, there has been some fall off in returns. Jill, did you want to discuss that?
Yeah, I would say for 2020, it's way too early to estimate that. I just think it's really complicated when we don't really even know what to expect with income tax. And now with this happening, it makes it even more difficult to guess at what might happen.
Sure.
But George is right. Like, we won't really have any inclination until people start filing their returns, which would be, January through April of 2021.
Yeah. Okay.
So how many people are actually going to allocate and say they were working from home, because there is a little bit more work and documentation that's required to be able to do that. So even if people are able to do it, it doesn't mean they will. So there's all of those pieces as well.
But of course, we're not spending and budgeting money that hasn't come in terms of the income tax.
Yeah, I know.
It will be after the fact. So it's not like we're gonna say we're gonna go forward with projects and then those projects fall flat. We simply won't do the projects at that point if the money doesn't come in. But obviously the situation is reversed here, where we have the $14 million and we may be able to do more parks and recreation, more streets projects in the near future because of that additional money coming in.
Sure. And then and again, I make the comment because I understand, obviously those funds are earmarked for specific purposes, and I understand that. But it is just, we got some really, really great news this year, I think. But, I think as other council members and even city manager has said, we don't know what the long-term impact of this is going to be. And obviously that's a big concern for me. I think this was going to happen anyway, but if we could get an update on 918 and 915 in terms of those public safety grants, I think that'd be great. Glad to hear that some of those wages might be covered. I know that based on a DDA meeting, you talked a little bit about business support programs that we had in, but based on a conversation that happened at a DDA subcommittee meeting, I think there was a survey that went out to businesses after the fact, after our open air dining, to just kind of assess like how it went and like what other things we can do. You know a status on that? I know this is kind of putting you on the spot for something I didn't talk about before.
Adam will be up right after me, and he can talk a little bit about the business support programs and can see if we can have that information for you.
Great, that's great. And then what are our current percentages in terms of OPEB and pension? That might be a better question for Jill.
That's about 52%, I believe, for pension. Jill? 50.
Yeah, the whole plan is around 52%, which that does include Elmswood. The city is closer to like 49% for pension. And then on the OPEB side, we're around 33%, 33% funded.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate these presentations. I look forward to having maybe a further conversation with the parking and Parks and Rec, just so we can get a more specific assessment of that. Thank you for that. And of course, if this could be added onto the online agenda.
We'll put them on.
Okay, great. I will move on. Are there any other questions from members of council? Or city manager, do you have something else? Great. I will move on to our next item, which is 3.2, COVID-19 Human Services and Business Support.
Good evening. My name is Adam Cummins. I'm the Community and Economic Development Administrator with the city. And I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of some of the COVID-19 response programs we put in place for human services and business support programs. Emily, if you could go to the next slide, please. So basically, we're going to break it down into the human services support programs and business support programs. Under the business support, we'll discuss some of the direct financial assistance programs that we put in place and programming, and then some of the parking incentives and fee waivers that we've established to help save businesses money. Next slide, please. So George briefly touched on this. In April, we allocated $10,000 to among 5 nonprofits to help for those nonprofits providing services to people struggling with homelessness. So to help support, food and shelter. Emily, next slide, please. Now this program, in collaboration with Capital Area Housing Partnership, we just launched this on August 10th. Eligible households can receive up to $2,000 for rental and mortgage assistance. And so since its launch, there's been 24 inquiries and 3 applications, 2 for rental assistance and 1 for mortgage assistance. This program is being funded through the CDBG CV monies that George touched on earlier. And Emily, next slide, please. In early spring, the DDA financed the business relief program, approximately $180,000. There were 2 rounds, and a total of 67 businesses were assisted. Each business was awarded $2,500 to help with payroll, utilities, and other operating expenses. And then Emily, next slide, please. And launching this week using CDBG CV funds, we'll be doing an emergency business relief program, approximately $170,000 to help with utilities, operating expenses, and payroll. Again, this will be using CDBG CV funds. And next slide, please. So the Together We Will Stay Safe to Stay Open marketing campaign. This was kind of twofold. We put together a toolkit, a marketing toolkit for businesses, basically to promote and encourage safe behaviors identified by public health officials. And the whole thought behind this is if we can stay safe, if we can get people to adopt these behaviors recommended by health officials, then that's going to increase our chances of staying open. This was a very, very much a collaborative effort among the City of East Lansing, Ingham County Health Department, MSU, RHC, DDA, DMB. Staff have hand delivered these toolkits, paper copies with flyers and posters and floor stickers. And along with that, Mayor, you had asked George about a survey. We included a survey on to the business owners regarding the programming that the city has implemented thus far to get their feedback and see how moving forward we can better meet their needs and provide programming, that in a meaningful way. So next slide, please. And, we want to continue to have an attractive, vibrant downtown. And so we started this initiative for temporary art installations. And the thought behind this, again, is to provide that vibrancy, provide that attractive downtown where people enjoy to gather, but we don't want to draw large crowds during this time, obviously, right? And so the thought behind this was temporary art installations that are going to promote safe behaviors and create that vibrancy that we're looking for. What you're seeing here is in Valley Court. This art installation was installed by 2 artists, 2 PhD students at MSU. One's enrolled in the Emerging Leaders Program. And next slide, please. And so early this summer in June, we released a temporary expansion of restaurant services to outdoor areas, along with extended use of right-of-way for retail operations. We did waive the application fees, saving businesses around $1,300 through this program. Next slide, please. And George touched on this as well. The DDA financed the open air dining area on Albert Avenue. There were 19 picnic tables. And this is one of those programs with a dual purpose where, we're providing an environment that's, a healthy environment under these conditions during the pandemic, as well as trying to increase economic activity downtown. This program was launched as a pilot, and part of the survey that was issued to business owners, we're collecting that feedback now on how we can improve, enhance, modify this program moving forward to better meet their needs. And next slide, please. We also launched a curbside pickup pilot program in the Bailey parking lot. Minimal amount of funds expended here just for printing purposes. But we're really trying to get an idea of how many businesses are interested in utilizing these services. And then moving forward, again, this was in the survey sent to business owners. How can we modify, enhance, and change this program moving forward to better meet their needs? And next slide, please. The We Have You Covered Downtown Ambassador Program we launched last week, August 20th. It's a stationary table tent made up there's 2 ambassadors, and think of it as a resource. You know, pedestrians downtown, if you're like me, you forgot your mask in the car and you're in need of a mask. And this table, these ambassadors are there to provide that mask for those in need. They're not there to enforce mask wearing by any means. And next slide, please. And then with the state of emergency, the mask requirement within the DDA boundary, we have installed and are continuing to install mask requirement signs throughout the downtown and along the perimeter of the DDA, just to notify people, hey, you are now walking into an area where masks are required to be worn. And next slide, please. This was kind of briefly touched on, but you know, parking incentives, the 2-hour free parking or 30-minute grace period that was implemented over the summer, that equaled, you know, just over $65,000 in savings to, you know, downtown residents and visitors. And then the fee waivers that we implemented for the restaurant license and entertainment license, that saved downtown businesses just over $86,000. And next slide, please. So moving forward, we've implemented, executed many programs so far, and right now we're undergoing data collection in various ways. So first, we have several of the ambassadors that are going to be kind of filling in the capacity that we're lacking right now for a full-blown data collection effort. When we've been out hand delivering the business toolkits, we have been collecting data with an app on our phone. And the 2 ambassadors are now going to come finish that project on our behalf. And that data collection is, you know, what changes in operations have certain businesses implemented since COVID? What are their hours of operations? Are they temporary closed? When do they plan on opening? And above all, you know, what's the best way to contact each business owner? And then to that end, within the toolkit, as I stated earlier, we provided a survey to the business owners to, you know, solicit their input on the programming that we've implemented so far and how, you know, the benefits, did it benefit or did it not benefit the business? Were they aware of the program? Just so we can better understand how to move forward in a meaningful way. And we're continuing every day to research best practices and come up with alternative solutions that we'll be soliciting broader stakeholder input on once we kind of hash it all, bring it all together. And next slide, please. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions. What you're seeing here is just kind of a summary of the programs and the expenses thus far directly related to COVID-19 support.
All right. And I'm going to ask again, this presentation just be please put on the agenda on the online. But any other council members have questions for Mr. Cummins?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Maybe a few.
Yeah.
I don't know why I envisioned the ambassadors wandering around the DDA area. Did we ever talk about that, or the decision was to, you know, sit them at a table and?
Yeah, you probably envision it because we did talk about that. And, you know, MSU, they were talking about having their ambassadors actually walking around. You know, as we're launching this program as a pilot, we felt, you know, safety concerns and other concerns, just to have a stationary tent, an identifiable location where everyone who visits downtown, goes into a business owner can say, forgot your mask, you can go to Ann Street Plaza, they can supply one for you. So it was a consistency thing as well.
Okay. And are they tracking traffic to the table?
Yeah, they are actually. So this first weekend that they launched, they had 65 people visit the tent. and handed out 50 masks along with hand sanitizer and informational materials regarding businesses downtown.
Thank you.
Great. Any other council members? I do have a few questions as well. But...
I just wanted to speak to that, kind of piggyback Dana's comment a little bit. I think, in an ideal world, it would be great to not have to be worried about our young employees confronting people who come to an area that has been advertised as a mask area, perhaps specifically to make a stink. But I can tell my outside experience, I am active on several different retailer forums, and the fear is not unfounded. There is really a lot of actual violence happening by people who are resisting the idea of wearing masks. And I think, to put kind of quite young and fairly vulnerable employees in a position where they might have to confront somebody in that way, I am much more comfortable with them behind a table. It's been a little while since I checked in with our acting police chief, but my kind of fantasy of how this would work would be to have, officers on foot patrol downtown who are kind of gently reminding people that masks are required, and then sort of pointing out, and you can go get them at this table where we have people who have masks that you can get them, so that, just to kind of protect a little bit. It's a crappy thing to have to think about, and it's frankly shocking to me that there are adults who would violently react to people asking them to enforce a fairly benign rule, but that is unfortunately the reality that we're living with. So it's not what I would like to see in an ideal situation, but we are not in an ideal situation. So
thank you for that comment. Any other folks? And I will say, just again, speaking to my earlier comments, I'd say a good majority of people, when you inform them of the rule, they're all right. But there are still people that are not so happy about that comment. And, we do have to think about the safety of those folks. Although I will say, I think that if we're collecting data, and to speak to Councilmember Watson specifically, on how many people are actually approaching, how many masks are we handing out, what our compliance is, then I think we should have a follow-up conversation on the council level on, okay, do we need to alter our program? Do we need to have people on foot patrol? In fact, the city manager and I had a very good conversation, just Saturday night with the deputy chief on, his proposal for neighborhood. Sorry, what was the actual title of those folks? I don't want to get it wrong.
Neighborhood resource specialists.
Neighborhood resource specialists as that kind of avenue where they do have an authority, they do have, a little bit of more of a backing than maybe those ambassadors would, but they might be a perfect solution to have somebody walking around downtown or walking around to different parties like we've been doing before. So yeah, I will say, Dana and Jesse, I think both of your comments are very, very well received in that, at least from me. So any other folks before I get into a couple of things for me? Great. So, I'm really interested to see in what the survey yields from business owners. Obviously, I've only heard kind of anecdotal, comments back and forth, on the effect that the mask order has had, the effect that the outdoor dining has had, the removal of that, and I've heard positives and negatives for all of that. Some business owners say having that mask order means that we've got a little bit more backing, right? To say this is enforceable, this is what's here. Other people say it's going to encourage people not to come to the downtown, which I can 100% see as a valid concern. Some people said the downtown, open air dining program was great because it left, extra capacity for people to sit. Some other people said we had really big issues with traffic, right? Because it was closing Albert. I've seen other cities, and Adam, you actually mentioned this. Sorry, Mr. Cummins, you mentioned this on a DDA meeting, talking about the conversation on maybe even closing some on-street parking. So you don't have to close down a street, but you have some table spaces there. Obviously, there might be a concern with traffic flow, but just looking forward to seeing what that survey yields. And I will say, as one member of council, I am very, very in favor of doing things that'll help these businesses. So if there are proposals that, even if it's our next discussion only meeting in September, that we can have a conversation where it doesn't need to be a fully thought out proposal, but just ideas. I'm very down to have that conversation on the council level. Mr. Bacon?
Yeah, is there any consideration around with the fall coming now, doing any open air activities with distancing and all those types of things now to kind of promote downtown, people moving around downtown, et cetera, in open air type things?
Open air as far as the dining, those kind of
more like when you have musicians or things like that. I understand the distancing part of it, but if it's the goal is to keep people moving and moving around down there, is there any consideration about implementing some of that in the fall around?
There's definitely consideration. We're continuing to research, how can we provide those kind of activities in the safest way possible. Our whole economic recovery strategy is public health. And strongly believe if we can protect public health, that's going to protect our local economy. And so we're going to continue to research those practices and see what we can come up with. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue, but just curious.
Yeah. And I know folks in the community are already looking to try and host events and do different things for, downtown. I just thank those people for doing that. As well, I think that in our conversations with MSU, maybe because they don't have folks on campus, we could have a conversation with them about, encouraging some of their already existing organizations to, like whether it's encouraging folks to get t-shirts downtown from like Retro Duck, or it's, saying, go get a gift, from, any of our random retailers, whether it's Sundance or it's a lot of different places. So I want us to think of unique solutions. So maybe that's a conversation with MSU because they do have a lot of clubs that I think are, looking for ways to help out. And I don't have them off the top of my head, but, I think we could do something there.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Jesse.
A lot of the, just to throw an idea out there, a lot of the fiber businesses do like passport style events where many businesses are listed on a single passport and you visit a certain number of them. And then there's usually some sort of drawing or prize or something like that. But I think kind of encouraging people to, once they're downtown, try another business that maybe they've never been to before, with the idea of kind of exploring some of the offerings out there. We do have odd little things kind of in sort of weird places that people wouldn't necessarily know about unless they were looking. But and we haven't had a chance to sit down since you came on board. So if you want to like brainstorm anytime with me, just give me a call.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
When do you think that survey, we're going to get results back from that?
That's a good question. So when we launched the survey with the toolkit, we were actually quite concerned with the very low response rate. And so we reached out to DDA, some members on the DDA, and kind of expressed our concerns and asked for their help. And since they've stepped in, it went from 0. And forgive me, last time I checked was Friday, so I'm sure it's increased since then. But they got involved on Tuesday last week. By Friday, we already had 13 responses. And so we're going to continue that outreach to solicit more responses. And if that takes another week, another 2 weeks, so be it. But we will have to cut it off at some point.
Okay. Yeah. And just, go ahead, Ron.
And just anecdotally, something I was sitting here thinking about with the students not returning, and I know a lot of small businesses were really pending on that being part of their strategic plan. Will there be a second wave of possible whatever mechanisms of relief that we have? We consider like a second round of relief minus.
Yeah. These are all the things that we're exploring. It's kind of this phased approach, because as we're getting more information, as the pandemic continues and is ongoing, we're realizing, okay, that business relief in April, obviously there's probably more business relief that's needed now. And so how can we create programs that are going to help increase revenues, protect public health, and then also, how can we fill the gaps with those grant and loan programs as well?
I'll take it offline as well. If you can reach out, I'd like to have a meet with you as well and talk offline.
And really quickly, Jesse, before you go, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No.
Just as a small concern, I just, how has the outreach been to like non-downtown businesses? So when you're talking about like Trowbridge Plaza, some different areas, that we've got a lot of small businesses that are kind of sparsed out that might not be in like really big business districts, but they are, of course, people that we want to support.
Yeah. So a lot of our funding has come from, the Downtown Development Authority. And so we can only expend funds within that boundary, right? However, there's plenty of state and federal grant opportunities and other resources that are available. And each time those are available, those are blasted out through various channels, through various partners as well.
The Community Development Block Grant assistance is available citywide, right? The CV funds.
Correct.
Gotcha. If there can be any kind of conceded effort to reach out to some of those other folks, it's not going to be the thing where you can close down, right? Like Saginaw, to have an open air dining for one business, but I don't know what the answer is. There isn't an answer to how we support these folks. So I'd rather just hear from them. So thanks for that. Any other questions, comments?
I just had a comment. I think just to clarify the MSU online and student situation, I think, I think we will see that probably the majority of the MSU students are still in town. I think almost everybody that had a lease that was signed off campus seems to be here. We've got a lot of students here, even with MSU going online. So it is a smaller population, but it is still a considerable number of people. So I would say that, downtown is definitely not a ghost town based on my front window view. And, not to say that we don't need to keep on top of that and that we don't still have a critical problem with our small businesses, but it's definitely, there's a good population of students that are still living in town, even with MSU going online.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of, I don't imagine that number has decreased much from the folks that are living off campus. In fact, in some areas, it might have even increased because people are trying to buy or rent apartments for folks that weren't able to live in the dorms. Which is why I say, if we could get some kind of, programs for, I think community leaders are doing some stuff for, some of our full-time residents. If we could work with MSU to do something for, students to encourage them to be downtown, or in our other local businesses in a safe way, that'd be great. So looking forward to hearing an update on that survey and maybe some possible solutions going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will move on to our next conversation, which is strategic priorities. Thank you. Strategic priorities, introduction and overview. I believe that's the city manager.
Great. So strategic priorities are kind of the goals and objectives of council in some way. It's the things that we would work on if we consider that we do all of the normal things of council of the city. We respond to calls for emergencies. We plow streets. We pick up trash. All the normal things of city government are done. What are the things that council and staff think we should be doing to improve the city as an organization, so the city government, and also improve the community that we serve? What are those projects? And in some way, you can think of strategic priorities as, from a council's perspective of what are the things that excite you about serving on city council? What do you want to accomplish as a city council? And then think strategic priorities. What are the priorities that we're going to be working on over the next year, 2 years? And we typically think of this as a 2-year time horizon. And that's the same conversation we really have with staff in terms of people coming up with projects and things that they think are something that benefits the organization, benefits the city, produces efficiencies, makes the city more effective. So you probably wouldn't think that procurement cards, P cards, are something that's that exciting to you. But for the finance department and for Jill, she thinks it's a great program because it creates efficiencies of operation and it has the opportunity for rebates where the city could benefit to tens of thousands of dollars. So it's taking something you're doing, purchasing, implementing a program to make it better, to make it more efficient, more cost effective. So that's an exciting project for a staff person, for someone, I can think of a lot of things that I've gotten to do as a staff person and say, wow, that's really an exciting project. I'm happy to implement it. And thinking about our healthcare task force, lots of things we've gotten to do. So that's the way we think of strategic priorities. What are the things you want to do as a council and accomplish? So this list has been generated from things that have been said from prior councils, and it's also been things that have been solicited from staff as a part of that sort of empowering conversation about, again, how do we move the organization forward? Now, part of this is going to come from staff naturally because council is not going to know that potentially an option for a anaerobic digester, which is one of our great projects out at the wastewater treatment, the water resource recovery facility. You're not going to know about it, but it's something that the people who work in water resource recovery Scott House and the people who work at the facility, they're saying this is a cutting edge project that we should be working on. And then we say to council, this is what we want to do. And then council says, yes, that's in line with what we want. We want a sustainable community. We want a community that's saving money and providing efficient services, but is sustainable environmentally while doing it. So that's the type of things you got to think about when you think about strategic priorities. Also think about the fact that this is a draft. What you're seeing before you is a draft because we want council to make a motion at some point and say and adopt them as your priorities. We're a bit behind here because this was originally presented in February. And last February, we had a list of things and we said, these are the priorities. And we started a conversation with council at that point. And then it turned into COVID right before we were going to bring them back for council's second conversation where council would weigh in and give us the feedback. We would tweak them and then council would adopt them. And then we would be moving forward on these priorities. So you'll see that there's progress on priorities. Again, we've wanted to accomplish things over the past 6 months, but this is your document and your priorities. So again, consider this a draft. When you think of those things that you want to accomplish, that's what we want to hear from council on. What are the things that council wants us moving in a direction to accomplish in terms of our service to the community or our efficiencies as an organization? Let's skip to the next slide there. Thank you. So strategic priorities, there are 6 priorities. You can think of these as the sort of broad categories under which all the priorities and all the things that we're working on are organized. These also line up coincidentally or not so coincidentally with priority-based budgeting. Priority-based budgeting is a sort of cutting-edge budgeting process that links dollars to outcomes. What are the things you want to spend money on in the community? And how do we know we're getting what we want to pay for? So it's a much more efficient way, I think, of looking at a budget and seeing how you're actually spending the money that you're allocating. Rather than going through a 200-page budget document, you can actually click and see programs. So that's what these things line up for. They line up as results under priority-based budgeting. Next slide. Now, this is actually coming from priority-based budgeting from our online portal. This is good governance. Good governance is essentially the city operations. So your city government, how we internally function, how the services we provide, the things we do as an organization. You'll see all the slides. The tab headings are, again, the results. Below that are definitions. Now, those definitions change for every tab you click on. So all of those definitions relate to good governance. Definitions are ways that are further illustrate what the result means to do or accomplish. I'm not going to read those to you because you can go read them at your leisure. There's a wealth of information there to sort of give your to focus your thoughts on what the result is there to accomplish. But we'll jump right into the actual priorities. So good governance, next slide, please. Now, there's a lot of text here, and I'm trying to figure out a way how to present all of this information without having a lot of text. So I'm going to Scott House here with the slide that has lots of information. But it's important information because it talks about the actual priorities we're working on and then what are the actual progress that we've made. At the end, I'm going to link this to the strategic priority document that we actually send to you in post. And this is 2 columns from that document. That document has things that related to priority-based budgeting, but these are the things that are most significant for council. It's basically the goals and directions in the first column under good governance, and then the progress is going to be things that we've worked on over that period. Now, I'm going to say that because of the last 6 months or 5 months being under COVID, a lot of these things have been held off because we simply haven't had the staff to be able to allocate to them, or they've been held off because we're trying to save money and deciding if we should make those expenses at this point, or if we should wait into the future further in order to have those to spend that money. So I think that you'll see both of those things going on here. And also you'll see that the way these are organized is at the top of it in the text that's in black has the oldest text, so the original text, and then the red underneath it is going to be more recent updates. And that's the way we always do it. More recent updates come at the end. So after you've read this a couple of times through, you'll more than likely just read the goal and then jump over to the most recent text to see what the update is. So that'll give you a sense of how to read these in the future and be more efficient with your time. I'm going to go through them, try to go through them rather quickly and talk about the goals and then a little bit of the progress to date. So grow the number of connections and increase engagement across all 3 platforms. This is related to communications of e-newsletter, social, the social outreach, and also website. I'll have numbers for you shortly, but we already have very good progress in terms of increasing the uptick. If we're sending information out, we want to make sure that we're reaching more and more people. So that'll be our goal, is to take a baseline of 2019, 2020, and see if we're able to add more people to our 3 main platforms of communication. Launch a newly redesigned website. If you've noticed our website, it's got a lot of great information, but it's looking dated. And that we actually had a launch ready to go last spring. But what happened obviously with COVID was we were sidetracked in that. So all the data has been moved over to the new website, but essentially we want to, we'll be in the early fall launching a redesign of the front page and then launching it as a new website. So you'll get to see a much more updated design and hopefully a streamlining of the website content so that it's easier to find things in a more organized fashion. So that's a good project for us. Improve internal procedures for communicating with residents during an emergency. This was an unusually prophetic one, because what we said here was that we want to come up with the tools and the templates for communicating during an emergency. And then before we got to work on that, we had an emergency. So this is one of those work in progress that we will be working on in the coming months. The same people who would work on this, Michael, Quinn, are the people who are communicating during an emergency. So that will be something we'll be working on. Mayor, did you have something?
I did. I just, for the sake of time during our meeting, so what's the timeline and process for these strategic priorities in terms of like this council?
We're already moving forward with them.
Okay. Okay.
Did you want me to speed up? Did you want me not to present on all of them? Because I'm fine if council doesn't want to hear this now, but
No. I think it's very, very important. I was just wondering if we were going to have a follow-up conversation with this council and reassess strategic priorities. That was my.
What I'm hoping to do is have council ask any questions now, understand what the priorities are, and then bring it back for a future meeting where you will finalize and hopefully tweak if needed, add to it if needed, and then adopt directly.
Gotcha.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Hopefully. No, I'm 100% fine with that. My only thing was that I think this is the first time that the newer council members are seeing this document. So I would say that probably need a little bit of time to digest each individual thing. It is a lot of information.
No approvals are needed tonight.
Okay.
This is a presentation on it, and then you can chew on it, and then we'll come back in September for adding and finalizing at some point.
Great.
Okay. These are a couple of fire department ones. One is smoothing annual budget impact for large capital items. We have a large capital budget for trucks and for vehicles. This will be adding expensive items like EKGs and stretchers and other items. These items typically cost $40,000 to $60,000 or $70,000, and this is adding those to a capital replacement schedule. One of the ones here I just missed is track data and assess efficiency and effectiveness of different utilization strategies for vehicles. We have purchased a rapid response truck, which is basically a small fire truck. This rapid response truck is going to take the place of a large fire truck for ambulance assists and other calls. And we're going to be able to assess the use of that truck to see if we're able to offload some of the wear and tear from one of the $1 million trucks by a truck to a truck that costs $200,000 and would get a lot less wear and tear. Driving a big truck down the road tends to be pretty hard on the truck itself in terms of wear and tear. Staff providing support to the Human Relations Commission, but actually that's obviously switched now to the police review. So city manager, interim police chief, and other staff to provide assistance when council moves this initiative forward. So we're there to provide assistance as needed to that commission. This one is put on hold. We're moving towards an online portal, we want to move towards an e-document where we try to move towards a more paperless environment. This is a costly endeavor. It really increases efficiency, but because of the cost, we say to put this one on hold until we have a further sense of what our resources look like. Moving more to online, this is an area where we've actually had a lot of progress. We have water bills, property tax, parking, yard waste, stickers, Permits for housing and engineering, all available to be paid for online, which is great for our customers. Obviously, yard waste and residential parking have come more recently. So that's good ways for people to interact with us. And we're going to be continually looking for more ways for people to interact with us online. In terms of program efficiency, I mentioned P cards. This is a strategic priority the council approved at our last meeting. We'll be working over the next several months to implement that, and then hopefully benefiting from the efficiency and the rebates that go along with that program. And then collecting and tracking inquiries online. This is another area where we were put on hold, but looking to have a centralized database for all of our citizen inquiries. So not by department, but across departments. So any call to a city department could result in a customer service inquiry, and then getting that information to the right department, and then documenting the proper follow-up so that we know our residents receive the proper service. So it's an efficiency thing, but that's something that we'll be working on now that we're more back in the office. And then we have here accreditation through the Michigan Police Association. This is an area that we're reassessing based on the police reform movements. Do we want to be working towards an accreditation, or is that something we want to hold on? Also, we're hiring a new chief, hopefully in the fall, and that'll be something we'll want to assess between the law enforcement review, police review committee and our new chief. So those are good governance, goals and directions and progress. Now, does anyone have any questions about good governance? I know it's a lot of information, but it kind of gives you a sense of what we're looking for and what the type of things are we're working on in good governance. Okay, with that, I can move to the next one. Next slide, please. Next is economy. And you can see all the definitions. Again, I'm not going to go through those because you can do that at your leisure on the priority-based budgeting. I'll send out a link for the priority-based budgeting to make sure you can find it. It's off of the city manager's webpage. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Here we have update the zoning code in alignment with the comprehensive plan, including form-based code. I think everyone knows that we've had a number of citizens and staff working on the form-based code. That has been put on hold because of COVID. That group is being reconvened starting next week. And then beyond that, we're going to look to how to have community outreach to design professionals, to developers, and to citizens about the form-based code before it's implemented. So that's something that we'll be looking at, and how in the COVID environment we do that outreach, but a process that's moving forward. Maximize the use of downtown parking. This called for a parking, an update to the parking master plan. At this point, we're going to be holding on that because of the money, but also you want to have parking at your normal status before doing a plan, kind of like the housing study. We want to have it at the normal status and don't want to do a parking study when there's a COVID environment that is severely changing our parking situation at this point. So that's something that will be re-looked at as parking begins to normalize. Continue to implement policies to attract a more diverse age groups and daytime population to live and work in the downtown. This has been a really big push from councils over the past years about diversifying our downtown economy. You know, it's very easy for us with MSU there to have a downtown that is focused solely on students. It could have businesses and apartments and places to live that are all student focused. And the problem is that really excludes other age cohorts from wanting to come downtown if it tends to be places and businesses that cater to students. So obviously the goal has been to have restaurants that are exciting for different age demographics, having housing that caters to different age demographics, for instance, the Neumann lofts with the 55 plus and those sorts of things. And then clearly we see here tonight, actually, council will be approving putting of a public hearing for MSU FCU for the end of September. Really exciting plan because diversifying with office. This is our first big dedicated office building, a pioneering, if you will, office building in downtown with a great East Lansing company with MSU FCU. So we're excited to see that diversification to the downtown. And then encouraging additional employment center development. This is an area where there are other things. We've had several office projects completed recently. Obviously the new tower with MSU in process. And then we've also have a master plan that anticipates employment related uses on our own property. We have property that the city purchased on Coleman and West Roads, about 26 acres. The city council at our last meeting approved a request for proposals where real estate professionals, commercial real estate professionals will be marketing that for us. And our goal really is to try to get a uses out there that promote, some sort of a corporate use, something of that nature, so we can have, a stronger employment base and sort of diversify as well in terms of more professional positions that are making a good wage in the city to provide good jobs for people, which helps housing, which helps your restaurants, which helps your businesses, and all along. So that's something that's exciting as well, the potential out on Coleman and West Road. And then redevelopment of evergreen properties. This is an area that has challenged the city for the last, I'd say decade, probably, and that we have a number of things we want to share with council. So this September, we're going to bring a presentation to council that talks about the history of this parcel, how it came into the city's being, what we've done in the past, and what we're sort of looking to do with that parcel. And then the next week, hopefully have the current developer, Caddis, come in and talk a little bit about their vision and what they see happening. And that's really to get the council up to speed, to make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of what a potential future can look like for that parcel. That's been a bit of a challenge for us. It really is an exciting parcel, but it's had some challenges. Yes?
Just as a note, city manager, I think that's very, very good. I was actually going to ask as a follow-up if we could have a council discussion on that, just because the DDA and the city council, obviously there's been a conversation about a disconnect in the past. So I think having that conversation sooner rather than later is good. Yep. Thank you.
So we'll have 2 in a row. September will be 2 meetings on that. And one is the history and where we are now, and one will be going forward. And then I think, let me just see. Okay. And then that's all for vibrant economy. Obviously, you kind of get a sense of the direction, again, we're going with vibrant economy. And if there are other things or interests or questions you have about that, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, we'll move on to the next one.
I think we're good to move on. I just note that, under the MSUFCU, it says with council action expected to occur in October. I think you mentioned that if we approve a public hearing today, it'll occur in September. So for anybody watching,
we'll be able to move it a little bit faster even.
Yeah.
Can we switch to the next slide, please? Strong, safe, diverse community. And again, you can see the definitions. Next slide. So here we see the property maintenance code. This is the International Property Maintenance Code, is what we basically inspect in terms of the rental housing license code. So we inspect apartments and housing units to make sure that they adhere to the International Property Maintenance Code. We are currently, the adopted code is 2006, and it's updated at a 3-year cycle. So at this point, we're several cycles behind, but we don't chase this every 3 years and change the city's adoption of the new code, because there's local amendments that have to happen. And then if there are lots of changes that have to happen year to year, that's something that landlords then have to do very quickly. So basically what we do is look to update it over time as there's changes that are significant enough. At this point, we're looking to implement the 2018 Property Maintenance Code, and that will be, as we mentioned, revisited as operations normalize, and that'll be something that'll be coming to council in the future. 6 pillars of 21st century policing. Obviously, the significant one for us has been the ELPD sergeant moving to oversee our newly created Community Assistance and Proactive Services Unit. CAPS will encompass 2 social workers and 4 part-time neighborhood resource specialists. CAPS supports Pillar 4, community policing and crime reduction, by using a multidisciplinary approach to implement problem-solving efforts to complex community problems. So it's a non-enforcement oriented unit embedded in the police department. That is something that's underway already. We have the positions posted for the 2 social worker positions, and I think we're already getting applications for those. And then we have the neighborhood resource specialist positions currently in process, where those are bargaining unit positions, and we're working through the issues of the bargaining unit, and hopefully we'll have those positions posted soon. But I would expect that division will be up and running in the fall yet. We're looking forward to that. New program, implement an employee training development initiative focused on diversity and inclusion. Obviously, you see that we hired our diversity administrator, Elaine Hardy, the beginning of June. We also last week council hired a consultant to assist in a citywide organizational training and cultural realignment for all city staff from council all the way through all departments and all employees. And that's something that we're looking forward to starting in October, September or October. So we'll be reaching out to council, hopefully scheduling dates for that. We also have additional training for our police department, and you can see there from all levels of the police department in terms of de-escalation as well as diversity and perceptions.
One question, George.
Sure.
Or just to interject here,
Go
I
ahead.
think there's a couple things minced together here, and based on the level of investment and training and all the things that are going on here, I think I like the safe and diverse community thing. I think it's a separate bucket that needs to be around diversity, equity, and inclusion based on the level of dollars invested, capital invested, hiring, Elaine's placement. I think that's a separate thing here based on the climate, direction, things around accountability for this stuff going forward. We're spending dollars on it and doing a lot of things around it. I think it's a separate bucket from this that needs to be in the strategic plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, we could look at trying to reorganize it to try to better capture what, the range of activities. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, I just don't want them to muddle together. I think this is a great goal unto itself with other things around diverse communities and that having its own set of value, but we're doing a intentional effort around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to put out spit out a product on the back end that says, here's what we did.
Sure.
That way it's not muddled into this part around community and that kind of thing. And that could get into housing, and that could go a million different ways. We're doing some really directed things around that and making a huge investment on actual diversity training and equity and that kind of thing. I like this. I think that's a separate goal, so to speak, in this setting, in this here, like a different separate line item or a separate goal, whatever we're calling
We
it.
can see how we can organize that and see if there's a way to capture that better. Next is increasing pool of qualified interpreters for court proceedings. This is an issue that the court was concerned about, but they're sufficient for remote operations. They will revisit it once classes begin in the fall. Obviously, classes have not begun, so they'll have to keep an eye on their interpreter services, but they say they're acceptable for now. Improve senior services, completing the age-friendly community process. That has been a 5-year process, started in 2017 and is ongoing. And then this relates to the fire department, address a diminishing pool of applicants by expanding a cadet program. The police department has a long history of having a very successful cadet program. And part of it is the way the police department is organized in terms of a front desk and more administrative type services. In fire, that has been a much more difficult operation to produce a cadet program for. We had one cadet that's been put on hold because of COVID. So I think that has to be revisited in terms of a way to try to create a viable cadet program for the fire department to create a strong pool of applicants and also encourage a diverse pool of applicants. Any questions or comments on strong, safe, diverse community? Okay, next slide. Next, we have environmental. Okay, next slide. So environmental sustainability. Transition to partially to hybrid ELPD patrol fleet. The city was initially going to purchase 5 vehicles after July 1 of 2020. After the purchase of those vehicles, there's a significant lead time for delivery and then setting them up and getting them into use as patrol cars. Right now, the department and Public Works has elected to go with 2 additional vehicles. So the hybrid fleet will be increased to 11 with this cycle of vehicles. We're typically on a 3-year replacement cycle for police cars. If we can get 7 at this point, we're about 20 vehicles. This should put us on a 3-year replacement to get into a fully hybrid police for all of our police patrol vehicles, which would be great from an efficiency point of view. Obviously, we want to test the 7 to make certain we're satisfied with the performance, but they have been a utilized platform at different departments. So we're optimistic about that in terms of cost savings and in terms of reducing our greenhouse gases, obviously. Next is continuing partnership with Lansing for regional recycling and with Mterra. material recovery facility. This is a facility that is currently under construction in the city of Lansing, that East Lansing and Lansing are both partnering for to drop off our single stream. Right now, our single stream recycling are being taken out of the region for processing. After October 2020, that MRF, which is a materials materials recovery facility, will be open in October, and they'll be able to process our and sort our recycled materials there.
Question,
Yep.
George. This is a little bit more specific and maybe a question for a follow-up meeting, but with that opening, I mean, is there still going to be that conversation around multifamily units and recycling?
I think that the idea actually is exactly that. I mean, that's a part of it, is to create the economies of scale in the region so that the facility can open, so that other players can come in and then have viable options for local single stream recycling.
Okay.
So I think you've hit on it exactly, that's part of it's creating that infrastructure locally for that to happen.
I mean, yeah, and just as a note, this has been a priority for ASMSU for many years. It's been a priority, I think, of this council, in former iterations for many, many years, to get that going. So, very glad to hear it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you can actually look at if I went further down in our very comment there, it says, and setting the conditions for private collection of multifamily recycling. So just what I said is right there. And it's actually, it's a perfect point, because that's been a longstanding policy of council, is to get multifamily, to have them have access to recycling. So that's a good one. The next two are solar. The first is identifying opportunities for solar infrastructure. And, council has had that goal of sort of zero emissions for city facilities. This looks at trying to move that forward. At this point, I think we're gonna be a little slower in terms of moving forward with the full roadmap. But in terms of DPW, we do want to try to look at, and we'll be hopefully having a contract with Michigan Energy Options to have them give us some consulting services so we can scale a solar field, potential solar project for the DPW site. The idea would be to take the site that's in front of the DPW building and put a solar installation there that essentially could largely take that building off the grid in terms of its energy utilization, and even potentially provide for electric vehicle charging in the future off of solar. Then you need batteries, and there's some complexity to that. But that's a really exciting project for us, and something we've talked about for a bit. And we'll certainly be bringing a plan when we have a more formulated plan to council for your consideration on that project. Coleman Road Extension Solar Streetlight Project. Obviously, we don't have solar streetlights in the city. This was an opportunity with the Coleman Road Extension to implement solar streetlights as a pilot program to check about the viability of these. We currently spend quite a bit of money, nearly $1 million on street lighting each year. So this would be able to reduce the cost, hopefully over time, but also reduce the energy consumption by taking those lights off the grid, having them solar powered and then a battery pack to keep them running. This has actually been approved. It says here that final implementation is subject to final funding and project award. I understand from Mr. House that those have been approved, and they will be installing the solar street lighting along that road. So when we're out there for ribbon cutting at some point, hopefully we'll get to see some solar street lights in operation in the near future. Next is identifying funding opportunities for electric vehicle charging infrastructure to allow for the expanded use of electronic vehicles by residents and the city fleet. So we're continuing to look for and having discussions around the implementation of charging infrastructure and potential grants. Obviously, the jury is still out on the charging infrastructure, whether that's private, whether it should sit at grocery stores and parking lots, or whether there's dedicated charging stations like the Tesla model. So that's something I think that's still in flux, but I think that's obviously an area that we want to be able to move forward to allow for greater adoption, both for our residents and for potentially our own fleet in the future. Next slide, please. Or any questions on this before switching environmental sustainability? Okay, next slide, please. Enhanced transportation infrastructure. This one has a lot of large projects. I'm just going to touch upon some of them. Completing the $33 million biosolids handling and digester project. This is the project I mentioned at the start. This is a very exciting project at the Water Resource Recovery Facility where essentially we'll be using the solids, the biosolids from the sewage waste in order to produce methane gas that's captured and then powers a generator, and that generator can power a significant portion of the plant. That water resource recovery facility is a heavy industrial facility, uses a lot of energy each year. So being able to offset a significant amount of that energy utilization by the methane gases that are extracted from the solids handling would really be a great environmental activity. It also reduces the volume of the solids that are essentially landfilled right now. Those would be a smaller or more condensed solid, so you have less waste. You're using the energy to power the process of cleaning the water. So it really is a great project, and we're looking forward to that coming online. It's 63% complete. And I think that is probably, even into the future, will be our largest environmental sustainability project because of the scope and the scale of it. It has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in energy costs to that facility. $11 million sewer project to Harrison Road Sewer and Michigan Avenue. We've all saw that work in progress. An exciting project that increases capacity and helps the Chesterfield neighborhood. $7 million Woodingham Pump Station project, 74% complete. That's a lift station. Essentially, a lift station is like an elevator that lifts sewage that comes from a gravity sewer that comes from the northern tier. That lifts it and lets it use gravity again to get to the wastewater plant or to the water resource recovery facility. That project is 74% complete. Initiating an Evergreen Utility Program project. This will be talked about more in September when we talk about Evergreen, but that has been an area where the infrastructure has not been sufficient. It's antiquated, and it causes challenges potentially for the neighborhood to the north, to Chesterfield. So we're looking to reset the infrastructure there and just implement that project. So that's something we'll be bringing to council, an exciting project for us, for the community and for that neighborhood. State revolving fund, council has approved the fiscal year 21 to 25 sewer and water resource recovery projects. This allows the city to get the benefit of very low interest loans from the state for those very costly infrastructure improvements. And we'll be looking forward to moving forward with those projects. And then continued investment in neighborhood streets and water and sewer improvements. A couple of projects here have been delayed because of COVID. We did not want to have significant amounts of the Glencairn and Bailey neighborhood torn up for large scale sewer projects. So those have been delayed until next year. Obviously, with people sheltering at home a lot, we thought that was a bad time to have this project move forward. So that's a project that will be initiated again next year. Non-motorized plan has been put on hold temporarily. Then next we see C2AE, which is an architecture firm helping the library with some infrastructure improvements. Significantly they're looking at a redesign of the front of the library. Their parking lot has actually been resurfaced. So has the Hannah parking lot been resurfaced. And also there has been some ADA accessibility improvements to the Hannah parking lot. But you'll be seeing more in terms of library activities coming in the coming weeks. And they'll actually be doing a redesign of that front area in terms of the concrete work, ADA accessibility, and so on. They've also done some work on their pop-up mobile library truck that will be hopefully in use in the fall to help deliver books to people. And that will be something that'll be, even without COVID, that was a plan that they had to do this. Basically, it's the library on wheels that can go to people. And then we have a number of projects at Patriarch Park, a pavilion and restroom project has been funded and is basically in the engineering portion, a really exciting project because there's some really antiquated infrastructure out there. Next, we have grants on the tennis courts and pickleball court replacement. That's something that's still in process and hopefully will be moving forward. And then we have a Valley Court concept plan that is being put on hold temporarily while we figure out our Parks and Rec funding. That will be sort of, I think of it as a next year to look at what our finances look like. Reviewing recommendations made by the Hannah Community Center. That's a group that looked a couple of years ago at potential funding sources for parks and recreation infrastructure, including the Hannah Center. And they came up with a pretty, I think, a bold idea to look at a dedicated millage for parks and recreation or additional tax for that. And I think that all of us would probably say that given the COVID environment, it is not really time probably to consider that sort of an option at this point. That's something that we should probably revisit beyond the pandemic when people's economic situations have stabilized. And then we have a fire station renewal. We've actually put new fire overhead doors into the fire station 1. Those are very heavy old doors, and they had to put new energy efficient doors that could be lifted more easily into the fire station. We also planned a renovation to the kitchen, which hasn't been renovated since the 60s, but because of COVID, they don't want people coming and going and contractors, so that's been put on hold. And then we have some updates to City Hall, the energy management system, fire panels, and a roofing project. All of those have been postponed due to budget constraints, and I think we have to look and see what our financial situation looks like next year. So a lot of infrastructure projects, a lot of exciting ones in terms of parks and in terms of sustainability in water and sewer and streets. Any questions about enhanced infrastructure? Okay. Next slide, please. Recreational and cultural opportunities. Okay, next slide. So here we have complete Patriarch Park ball field improvements and the Bailey Neighborhood Park renovation, the White Park Trail connection and natural areas improvement, and then the Northern Tier trail signage. Basically, I think all of these projects are well underway or completed. The ball fields project at Patriarch Park is substantially complete. The Bailey Neighborhood Park has had great progress and is under construction, expected for fall of 2020. White Park improvements have been underway as well in terms of the Northern Tier Trail going up and around into White Park. And now there's improvements to the natural areas. And then the Northern Tier Trail signage project is completed as well. There's also initial round of bridge and trail improvements have been completed as well. So a lot of projects in terms of trails and parks completed. Next, we have maintenance and improvements to the Hannah Community Center. This is a long list of ones. I'm not going to go through it, but we've completed a number of projects. We completed the phase 1 theater. Phase 2 of the theater is going to be completed in September. This is the lighting and sound, basically turning it to digital, because when the building was built and renovated, that was all analog and is antiquated equipment at this point. And that has been done through grant process. We've also completed the pool basement, and the pool deck had some concrete issues. That was repaired, and the water side replacement was completed as well. There's more roof systems and boiler systems that need to be looked at, and that's something that will be potentially have to hold until we look at a broader solution for funding the Hannah Community Center, which was just what I talked about with a funding solution, a long-term funding solution for parks and recreation. Enhancing visitor experience at athletic fields through infrastructure improvements. This is design portions that will be looked at and completed in calendar year 20. Basically, the projects here will be postponed until next year. This is soccer complex, drainage, and softball complex bench improvements. And then looking at infrastructure renewal projects, the aquatic center. This is the pool liner replacement and underground infrastructure mechanical systems. The engineering of these projects is going to be done this fall. And the idea is that if council and the environment permits us to move forward with these projects in the spring, then we can do that and then be able to open the facility hopefully next summer. But of course, all of that is pending the outcome of the COVID pandemic. And if that facility will be able to open next summer, hopefully it will. And then encouraging active, healthy, creative, environmentally friendly lifestyles. This is really going to be something that we're going to have to wait on. This is looking at services and the overall menu of services in parks and recreation. And obviously that menu of services is significantly curtailed because of the COVID environment. Any questions about culture and recreation opportunities? Okay, so next slide, please. So now we are at the conclusion, and I just wanted to show you briefly the two columns we looked at when we send you a strategic priority document. This is the example of good governance. Those are the two columns that are highlighted that we just talked about. The other ones really talk about the program, which is a priority-based program. It says under what program it comes. Then we get to the goal, which is what we just talked about, how it aligns with the results of priority-based budgeting. So how closely it fits with what the core things the city should be doing. And then we talk about what the progress is. So I just wanted to be able to show you that, because the slides, I pared them down to two columns, which was the two critical columns for you. But when we send you this quarterly tracking and when we post it to the website, this is what it's going to look like. It'll say good governance at the top, and then it'll go through, and you really want to focus on the goal and direction, which is really what we're trying to accomplish. And then the progress notes are the expanding area of showing what we've been able to accomplish. And with that very lengthy presentation, I can you can switch off the slides now and switch back to us, Emily. Great. A lot of information, I know, not easy to share in the COVID environment, I know, through Zoom. Ideally, we'd be in person and could have a more dynamic conversation around that. But I just wanted you to sort of get a sense of what the strategic priorities look like, how they're organized, and then plan to come back hopefully in September and hear more direction from council on what things we should be doing additionally and what we should tweak.
Great. Thank you, George. I'm going to suggest, just for the sake of time, that council members look over what was presented, give input, send questions to the city manager, and then when that comes back to our agenda, that is when we have a fuller discussion on this, just because I want to be cognizant of folks' time. I know school starts tomorrow. So I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break just to make sure that folks can, get back into the rhythm of things. So it is 9:25 right now. I will be expecting folks back at 9:30. I will see y'all then. All right, it is 9:30. Can we get that off the screen? I'm waiting for folks to come back. Okay. Jesse, are you there? Perfect. All right. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. City Manager, please.
Yes, the following items of consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 4.1, approve a resolution authorizing Chad Pride to purchase 2 years of service credit from Municipal Employees Retirement System, MERS. 4.2, approve a resolution honoring the life and legacy of James Butler III. 4.3, set a public hearing for September 22nd, 2020 to consider an application from Neumann Smith Architecture for the property at the northwest corner of Abbot Road and Albert Avenue, city parking lot number 4, to construct a 7-story office building, including a MSU-FCU branch credit union, community space, general office space, leasable tenant spaces, as related support and service spaces, and related site work. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Wonderful. Would anybody like any of these items pulled off?
I have a question.
Yes.
So Chad Pride was on the agenda the last time. And so was that like a...
It was Chad Connolly, I think.
Oh, it was a different, okay, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind then. All right. Thank you.
I checked on that. I didn't get to get back to you. I'm sorry about that. It was Chad.
All right, thank you. 2 Chads. That's all.
All right. Anybody want anything pulled off the agenda? Okay, great. I'll look for a motion.
I'll move that.
Are you moving the approval of consent agenda as written by the city or read by the city manager?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm moving.
Second?
Okay, it has been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes unanimously. Our next item on the agenda is the board and commission liaison assignments. So in order to make this a little bit timely, because we've done this in the past, and actually myself and former Mayor Byer, when we were having a conversation about boards and commission assignments, this was back in, I think, January or in late November. Actually, sorry, we start in late November. We talked about, how this has been done before and how we want to see it done in the future. And the truth is that it's great to just do it in public. And we go through each board and say, who wants to be assigned to that. So what I did is I asked individual council members to send me some of their preferences, not to make a decision based on this, because we're going to go through each one and we're going to make sure that, if somebody wants to be on a different one and they, don't want to be on something, then that's okay. They can voice that. But I could have an idea of where people wanted to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading through these commissions, and I'm going to list the person, if any, that expressed interest in it. And then we can have a discussion. And if nobody else, puts their hand up and says, I would like that commission, then we will move on to the next one. And if folks do have a disagreement, then we can have that disagreement, and we can say, whether or not somebody wants to volunteer their time to a commission, or they want to step back to let somebody else do that. Does that sound good to everybody?
Question.
Yes.
Are you going over them one at a time, or are you going to tell us which ones we can just cross off?
I was going to go through them one by one, but fairly quickly.
All right. And then how do I know how many I'm supposed to agree to at the end?
That's a good question. The answer is there isn't a defined number. This is about, where your issue area priorities are and where your time commitment can be. We want folks that are active in the commissions. And if you can't be, that's okay. I took on a few extra commissions last time, and I was happy to do so because I had the time to. I might not have the time to this time, and that's okay. And so that's why, we do this kind of out here, just to make sure every council member's schedule works with it. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I will say that it averages out to about 5 if we split them up relatively evenly. There's a few that are quarterly or regional that are not monthly, but which is, don't feel bound by that, but I would say that's kind of an average.
Great. I will start us off with the Arts Commission. and the art selection panel. These are kind of joint. They go kind of hand in hand. They've been traditionally done by the same person. That was me when I first got elected, and then it was Jessie after the fact, and she expressed that she would still like to be that commission liaison. Does anybody have an issue with that? Great. Jessie, Arts Commission and Art Selection Panel.
Thank you.
The BRA is the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. I am, by the fact that I am the mayor, I'm on the DDA, and I am on its subcommittees as well. I believe, George, please tell me if I'm wrong, but that also requires me to be the person that's on the BRA.
Yeah, if you're on the DDA, it's the same exact membership on the BRA.
Great. So that kind of accomplishes that. And the mayor pro tem may step in for me if I cannot be available to do those responsibilities. The next one is the Building Board of Appeals. I had gotten expressed interest from Lisa, Councilmember Babcock. Is that still the case? And does anybody else want to volunteer for that commission?
I have no intention of hogging this if someone else is interested.
Sorry, you guys, where is this on the color chart? I don't know if you can help me out. I see that you're going in order, but can you tell me like what day it is so I can just try to find it?
Yes, absolutely. That is the second Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Okay. Great. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
If it helps, it's under the vacant column and it's the second item.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm working off an Excel sheet that's in front of me, so I will attempt to point out where they are on the sheet that's online as well. Thank you for making that note. Okay, so I'm going to say that Lisa is our liaison to Building Board of Appeals. Great to hear. Our Board of Review, this is for property tax assessments and questions in regards to that. I did not have somebody that expressed interest in it directly. Does anybody want to take hold of that or volunteer?
Looking at you, new people.
No, and honestly, this.
I'd say cycle through it and come back around on the back end. Go through the ones that you kind of have. Like
okay.
Put them on the table, those to the side, and we'll come back around to them.
Not a problem, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand also with Income Tax Board of Review as well. So we're going to have that conversation later too. Capital Area Transportation Authority, the liaison to that has been Lisa in the past, and we also appointed the two East Lansing folks to that board. Does anybody have an issue with that continuing as Lisa, or somebody else want to step up for that? All right, I'm not seeing
hogging it. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, it's a great entity. It's
great. Capital Area Michigan Works. I'm actually the chairman of the board of that organization right now, and so I'm going to request that I maintain my seat there as the liaison from East Lansing, just so I can finish out that term. Anybody have an issue with that? Great. So Aaron is on Capital Area Michigan Works. The Commission on the Environment, we did have expressed interest from Dana and Lisa. So this one is one of you guys got to duke it out.
I don't mind if Lisa keeps it.
oh, okay.
Because I see that she was with them before, so I don't mind for continuity if you wanted to, that's fine.
Councilmember Watson, we are really having, an open conversation about this. I think everybody's willing to step aside to new folks. So if that's something that you view as, an area of a priority, I know that you mentioned in your interviews as well, as it is an area of priority, I'm sure that, a conversation can be had. Councilmember Babcock and the Mayor Pro Tem both expressed to me that they'd be willing to step aside, from previous commitments in the interest of making sure that folks have their priority areas. So if that's something that you do want to, advocate for yourself for, please go ahead. All right, since I'm not seeing that, go ahead, Dana, if you did.
I would just rather see what the whole layout looks like for me. And there's other groups that I was interested in, and if I can be with those groups, it's fine.
Okay, Okay. So right now I will tentatively put down Lisa as that person for COE. Celebrations committee. I have been that person in the past. I had a conversation. I think Jesse had expressed some interest as well. This is a commission that gets together with MSU folks, some landlords, and some people from their health department, their communications department, our police department, their police department, to talk about celebrations. Obviously, that's not going to be really much of a conversation this fall because sports and events along those lines are not happening. But in the future, I'm sure that this is going to be a conversation. So I'm happy to continue doing that with Jesse as kind of my second or the stand-in. If anybody else wants to step up, I'm happy to have that conversation as well. Okay, I am seeing none. So I'm going to say that that's me and Jesse. The Census Complete Count Committee, that's the fourth Monday of each month at 4 p.m. Sorry, and Councilmember Watson, I have not been reading off the times. I will start doing that. The fourth Monday of each month at 4 p.m. I didn't have anybody that expressed direct interest in this, so it is open up for grabs.
Take it.
Okay. Councilmember Watson, this is all you. Thank you very much. The Crystal Awards Selection Committee. So this had previously been the Mayor Pro Tem. I had expressed interest in it myself. I know that there was a fairly big time commitment to it, as you had expressed. Jesse, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a decent time commitment, but it's a very narrow time commitment. So it's kind of a flurry that happens over about 2 months. It was extended this year because COVID happened right in the middle of everything. So it's a little intense for a little while, but you definitely get to interact with some really amazing people in our community. So I would, I found it very rewarding. But yeah, it's a little bit of a time commitment, but only for a temporary time.
So I had expressed that I was willing to do that. I think it's a great program that we have, and I'd be happy to serve there. But I'm also happy to relinquish that if somebody else would like to serve. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to put myself then on the Crystal Award Selection Committee going forward. The Council of Neighborhood Presidents. So this has been something that goes through the mayor typically, but my goal is actually to cycle through individual council members and have folks come into that meeting to do introductions and to really just, I think it's a great meeting. I think receiving feedback is good. And I think every council member at this point has expressed interest in that to me. And I think that is important. So while that is typically done by the mayor, because I think it was originally even named the Mayor's Council of Neighborhood Presidents, but I am more than happy to have folks cycle through. So I'm going to reach out to y'all individually to try and get schedules for months that we're holding things, if that's okay with everybody.
Sounds good.
Great. Next is the DMB, the Downtown Management Board. I had Jesse down on that as the only person that had expressed interest. Jesse, you still good?
Yes, I would like to keep that if possible.
Anybody have any want to fight Jesse for it? All right, great. I'll keep Jesse on Downtown Management Board. DDA Project and Infrastructure Committee, again, DDA subcommittee. So that would be me or the Mayor Pro Tem if they were not, or if I were not able to be in attendance. DDA Business and Market Development, same thing. And then the Downtown Development Authority, as it is, same thing with the mayor sitting in that seat, unless dictated otherwise, as we've seen in the past, if time commitments can't be made. The East Lansing Meridian quarterly meeting, I didn't know what the requirement on this was. I didn't know whether it was a full council, whether it was individuals. George, do you have any?
I think that's actually something that the former mayor just started more informally to meet with Meridian Township. So there isn't really an expectation of it going forward at this point. But if you want to leave that one off for now and decide if that's something we want to continue.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I know that Councilmember Watson had expressed interest in being part of that. So I'm going to put her down tentatively for that. And then if we have updates on whether that's going forward, then we can kind of go from there. I'd say that's a half commitment then on Councilmember Watson. Great. The Economic Development Corporation, I had Ron had expressed interest in it directly. Anybody have any qualms? Great. Ron, I'm having you in there. And I'm sorry, I'm using first names right now, but that is just how my Excel sheet's in there. So I do apologize. I will attempt to start using titles. The East Lansing Meridian Water Sewer Authority is the third Thursday at 7:30 a.m. George, has this been regularly meeting?
I believe it's been meeting via Zoom, but it typically meets, and it's an important one, but it's not a very significant in terms of the preparation or time commitment. It's my understanding staff participates on the board as well, Jill and Scott House. Scott's a member. The city engineers for both Meridian and East Lansing are the chair and vice chair rotating. So it's an important group, but it's not that intensive, I don't believe.
Okay. So I have had, I didn't have anybody express direct interest in this group, so I'm happy to receive responses if folks want to participate.
Can you tell me who had it before so I can, oh, I see it. 7:30 a.m.
Yes.
is when they meet?
Yes.
That's early.
It is indeed early. All right, I will circle back to that one in the future. The East Lansing Public Schools Intergovernmental Committee, I had put down myself and Jesse as, or the Mayor Pro Tem as those people. Is that all right with folks? Sorry, George, did you have something on that?
No, I don't.
Okay, great. Any other folks that wanted to throw their hat in the ring, or? All right, great. I will keep that as myself and the Mayor Pro Tem. The Greater Lansing Convention and Visitors Bureau Board, the Mayor Pro Tem had expressed interest in this specifically. I didn't receive any other interest in it, but I am happy to receive that if there is right now. Great. I will say the Mayor Pro Tem then is on GLCVB. The Historic District Commission as well is up for grabs. Anybody wanting to take a dive into what is a very, very important institution in our community and very highly talked about. So, and that was, I believe that is under vacant. Dana, that is, sorry, the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. So, yeah. Again, second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. I can circle back to it if needed. Okay, I will do that. The Human Relations Commission. So that had previously been held by myself, but I had interest from Councilmember Bacon for that seat. Given the fact that he is a former HRC chair, I was more than happy to take a step back and let him take that liaison position from myself. Although I am very sad to see that position going away from me. That's okay. Anybody have any issues with that? Great. Then I will say Councilmember Bacon is the new liaison. Yes.
I just got an email from Scott House, who's one of the rotating chairs, about ELMSWA, and he said there's really two important meetings for ELMSWA. One is the annual budget meeting, and one is their annual meeting where they give the report of the annual performance. So you could boil that down to two critical meetings for ELMSWA, and then the others would be more as needed.
Okay.
Quick sense on that one.
Thanks. You know what? Let's put me on that for right now. Oh, Lisa, did you have?
Kind of goes along with environment and transportation, sort of the public works era. So if you want me to pick that up, I could.
Great. I will put Councilmember Babcock then as that liaison. All right. The Housing Commission. We had two folks interested, both Councilmember Watson and Councilmember Bacon. That is the third Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. I had previously been the liaison there, but I am happy to step aside given the fact that there is interest from two other council members on that. So again, third Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Both Councilmember Bacon and Watson feel free to discuss and talk through.
No, my interest was just out of respect for Councilperson Watson's time. I know she's trying to fit this into a specific schedule. So if it works, I'll step aside for if that was something she looked at the schedule and it works well for her, then I have no issue with stepping aside on that one.
That's great to hear. Councilmember Watson, you have a preference?
Okay, thanks. I'll take it.
Great. That is Councilmember Watson. Then on Housing Commission, Income Tax Board of Review. Income Tax Board of Review. I do not have a specific interest in this commission. George, you mind giving a quick explanation of what that commission does?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a rather low utilization of this, and it's going to be set for a time of the year, but I can check on that further, almost like the regular board of review for property taxes, which all the work comes over a couple-day period and then it's done. But we don't have much of experience with it. The cities we've talked to in the past have said it is not used extensively at all, but we're new with the income tax, so I just don't have enough experience to assure you of that. But that's my sense, is that it's a pretty low. I might be getting a text from Jill right now, as needed if someone requests. So I think our experience will be, it will be low intensity, a low intensity commitment, but I can't promise that.
I think I had with housing that I had on the thing was one of the, I assumed, higher utilization ones. I can put that in the mix with the stuff that's going to be on my list. So
okay, so sorry, just clarification. Did you want to take on the role for Income Tax Board?
Do I want to is a different question. I will take on the role of.
Anybody else wanted to jump in? All right, great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. The Local Development Finance Authority, that was previously, that is under vacant. It is quarterly. I think it was held by Councilmember Meadows before. Jesse and I had expressed that we would be willing to take that on, but I'm more than happy to step aside if somebody wanted to. Great. Jesse, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, would you be willing to be the lead on that? And then
remind me when it meets, sorry.
It's quarterly. I
quarterly.
actually, I don't have the dates in front of me. The
Okay,
chair.
that should be fine. Yeah. The monthly meetings I schedule around, the quarterly ones I kind of make them work, so that's fine.
Okay, great. And I can be your secondary if you can't make it on those. Library Board of Trustees, that is held currently by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. She expressed that she wanted to keep that commission. Anybody have any particular qualms with that? Go ahead, Councilmember Babcock.
I want the Mayor Pro Tem to keep it, but if she ever vacates it, I moved to East Lansing in part because I love that library. So if she ever vacates, I'm right there at her heels, but she's doing a great job. Thank you.
Lisa, if I ever can't make it, I'll deputize you to fill in for me.
Thank you.
Great. I'm moving on to our next one. So this is Lansing Economic Area Partnership. This was expressed interest by both Councilmember Watson and the Mayor Pro Tem. I'm happy to have an open discussion on that. This is also as required. I don't have the defined dates on that. George, would you
I think it's a general large board meeting that meets. I don't think that it's a regular requirement, but I can check on that. I don't think it meets on a regular basis. They have an annual meeting, I believe, with the members, but I can check as well.
I missed what group we're talking about.
Lansing Economic Area Partnership.
Oh, the LEAP. All right.
Yep. So it looks like it is not a monthly meeting, it's a quarterly meeting, or it's an as needed meeting of a very large board. So I imagine the time commitment on that is lower.
If Councilmember Watson is interested in that, I'll step aside. I'm getting quite a slate of responsibilities here, so.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Watson, are you all right with that? Great. I have Councilmember Watson as our person to lead. The LAP Helping Hands Respite Board, I'm the liaison right now. I would like to keep that if at all possible. If anybody has any issues with that, please let me know. Great. The MSU administration, the quarterly meeting, that has typically been done by the mayor and the mayor pro tem. I would like to obviously maintain being in the room for that. Jessie has expressed that she would like to maintain being in the room for that. However, we have had history with the city council where that meeting has been held by the mayor and another council member. So we can have that conversation if folks really do want to be in the room for that. Alrighty, I'm not seeing anybody jumping at the bit for that. So I am going to say that we have consensus on that the MSU administration quarterly meeting is going to be held by myself and the mayor pro tem. The Michigan Avenue Corridor Improvement Authority, Councilmember Babcock had expressed interest in this, and I believe is still the liaison to it. Is that correct?
Correct. It meets, it hasn't met yet in my tenure, but it sort of aligns with some of my interests. So I'm willing to share it, or if someone wants to make a good argument, I'll consider it. Sure.
Great.
I'm hearing no stampede.
All right, then I will maintain that Councilmember Babcock, you are on that board. The Officers Compensation Commission. Councilmember Babcock had also expressed interest in this. This is once every 2 years it meets, so very, very low time commitment on that one. Although I do know that those meetings do tend to run a little bit significant. So does anybody have any issues with that? Councilmember Babcock maintaining. Anybody want to throw their hat in the ring for it? Okay, Councilmember Babcock, I have you on Officers Compensation Commission. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, that is the third Wednesday at 7 p.m. Councilmember Bacon had expressed interest in this commission, and I don't believe I had anybody else express direct want for this, but I'm happy to have that discussion if necessary. Go ahead.
I currently fill that role. I don't want them to feel bad that I'm like abandoning them, but I do think it would be a good role for one of the new council members. And I'm feeling a little overcommitted. So I thought that would be a good one for me to pass the torch on.
Great. So I will say that Councilmember Bacon is now the liaison to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. The next one is Planning Commission. That is currently the liaison from Jessie, or the Mayor Pro Tem. And I know that we have two folks that are very involved in the Planning Commission, both former member and somebody that used to sit during the meetings, namely our Mayor Pro Tem. So anybody have any other interest in that? Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to keep that commission? And that meets, my bad, on the second and fourth Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Yeah, regardless of whether or not I'm the official liaison, I'll probably still tune into the meeting. So we could either do a split liaison where we kind of pass it back and forth, or I could step aside for somebody else and then I would, still watch if there was somebody that was feeling passionate about it.
Councilmember Watson, I'll just ask you because you just came from the Planning Commission. Do you have an interest in that? I mean, I know that that's a fairly big time commitment with other commissions.
When I was thinking about my boards and commissions, I just wanted to do some stretching, and that was why Human Relations wasn't on my list and Planning Commission wasn't on my list, but I just kind of wanted to learn in different ways.
I think that's great, and I think it'll be very helpful. So Mayor Pro Tem,
I'm happy to keep it. Totally delighted to keep it. Yeah.
Great. I have Mayor Pro Tem as the continued liaison to Planning Commission. The Parking Task Force, that had previously, I believe, been really done by myself and the Mayor Pro Tem, but I got interest from both the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Watson. I'm happy to step aside on that one. That is being held quarterly on Thursday at 8 a.m.
I know 8 a.m. is only 30 minutes past that 7:30 that I just complained about, but I'm interested in understanding more about parking and our parking task force, and if I could take it, I'd like to, but if, Mayor Pro Tem, if it's something you definitely want to keep, that's fine too.
So we had actually had two people there.
Yeah, we did two people. So yeah, so I'll probably still show up to the meetings if I'm so moved, but if you want to be the official liaison, that's great. I have a deep and abiding interest in parking.
Yeah, I think we all do it. So I'll take myself out of there. and I'll put Councilmember Watson and the Mayor Pro Tem as those folks that'll be attending the parking task force. The Responsible Hospitality Council, I currently have the Mayor Pro Tem as somebody that was interested in it. Again, that meets the second Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Mayor Pro Tem, are you still comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'll consolidate my stranglehold on downtown related commissions.
Okay, sounds good. Just as a note, it's a very important commission, and I think that they definitely need somebody from council there. Next one is our Seniors Commission. I had expressed interest in this, and Councilmember Babcock had also expressed interest in this. So I'm happy to be the second to that. I might still show up if that's okay with you, Councilmember Babcock.
Absolutely. It's a great group of people. Great. They're doing great things. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. Then I will say that Councilmember Babcock is the official liaison to the Seniors Commission, but the mayor might pop in here and there just to say hello. Our next item is the Transportation Commission. Both Councilmember Babcock and Councilmember Watson had expressed interest in this. This is the third Monday of the month at 6 p.m. So I'm looking for some consolidation on that. Just look at, we can take a minute to look at what people have committed to already, and that's okay to do. I know I'm running through this fairly fast. I just want to be respectful of folks' time.
One of the reasons that I like transportation is because it ties with public works. And I have a background in energy policy. And one of the reasons I identified that, one of the opportunities I identified for East Lansing when I ran was really increasing our green energy and options. So when I originally looked at this, I saw environment, transportation, the building authority as some opportunities to bring those things together. And I very much like the Transportation Commission, but you can't always get what you want. And I'm a sharing person. So I would miss them, but also welcome to the council. If you want it, you're welcome to it.
Fine if you keep it.
Okay. I think Councilmember Watson said it was fine if you kept that.
Okay.
So I will say Councilmember Babcock is the member on the liaison to the Transportation Commission. Next one is the University Student Commission. This is a role that I have taken on. I know that there was interest from both Councilmember Bacon and Councilmember Watson on this. I'll give my pitch. I was elected as a student, and I definitely, want to stay somewhat engaged, although I am a couple of years out now and I'm finding myself a little bit less than involved on on-campus activities. So I'm happy to have, folks come with me to that, or if this council feels like, the newer folks in the council want to get connected with that student population, I'd be happy to step aside and maybe just attend as an attendee rather than a liaison.
Yeah, my interest sparks from just having college age kids and also working with my high school guys, obviously my team and that kind of thing, just to be more plugged into the nature of the college environment and that kind of thing. That was really what sparked my interest in that commission. So
great. Councilmember Watson. Again, this has been.
Honestly, I'm flexible. Like, I want to do my part in all this, and I picked the students just to connect more with students and understand more student perspectives and what's going on with the students. It's been a little bit since I was a student, so I don't mind not doing it.
So you know what I'll do, just for the pure fact that maybe I get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because I'm walking around the downtown talking to some of these folks. But how about we have Councilmember Bacon and Councilmember Watson, both be. We can have Councilmember Bacon be the official liaison, but let's have both of them as the as our council representation for that group. And then I might pop in every once in a while if it doesn't meet a quorum, just to say hello. Is that all right with folks?
That's fine.
I have a circle back question.
Absolutely.
Where are we at on the list, first of all, on your list?
We have, after University Student Commission, we have 2 more besides the ones I have to circle back to, which include.
Okay.
All right, let me just list the ones that we still have left.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. Is that what?
Well, I was just trying to see where we were at on the list. I see, so we have 2 more to go through. I just wanted to circle back because Councilperson Babcock, you and I both chose the environment and the transportation. And I'm seeing like they both meet the 3rd Monday, one's at 6 and one's at 6:30.
Oh, gee.
So they usually, well, when we had physical meetings, I would toggle between them. I would start at Transpo and go to environment.
I get it.
What was the agenda?
Okay.
Transportation doesn't meet as regularly, and so they tend to have shorter agendas. I actually inherited that combo in a way from former council member Shanna Draheim. And I looked at it, I was like, how, I can't be in 2 places at once. And she's like, you start here and go there, or vice versa.
So maybe though, to Councilmember Watson's point, and I will never yell of Councilmember Draheim, but maybe we could have a separation of those 2 just in case meetings run long. Is that what you're alluding to, Councilmember Watson?
No, I was curious because I saw that, and we both picked those, and but let's just keep going and just see where we land with the other stuff.
Yeah, and to your point, I'm sure I am allowed to speak on behalf of Councilmember Babcock when I say if we need to rearrange some of these, I don't think it'll be that big of an issue. Okay, so our next is Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA, first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. I had Ron down as, I don't actually think you expressed direct interest in this, but just because of your interest in housing and some other issues that you had expressed to me and more phone call settings, I thought this might be an interesting fit for you, but anybody is open to put their hat in the ring.
Doesn't that conflict with HRC?
It does. I am sorry about that. 7 p.m. I read it out loud and I immediately missed that. So does anybody want to take on Zoning Board of Appeals? I will say, now that I'm not doing HRC, I do have a free Wednesday at 7 p.m. to Councilmember Bacon's point. So I'm happy to take that on if necessary.
Who had the Board of Appeals before?
I believe that was Councilmember Meadows, if I'm not mistaken.
I just don't see it on my paper.
Vacant line, 5-6 spaces down, the second vacant line.
Yep, hi there. Councilmember Watt, did you want?
I don't see it. I asked for a printout because I just need to
Yep, it is. So it's, if you go 4 over from right after.
Okay, all right.
And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's the 6th one down.
The zoning board.
Yep, Zoning Board of Appeals.
I see it.
First Wednesday at 7 p.m.
All right, I see it. Thank you. That wasn't
All good. You want me to circle back to that one, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, circling back, and then the last one that's not on this list, but it is going to be a thing, is our Police Oversight Study Committee, and I thought that it would be most logical to have the person that was appointed to that committee actually be our liaison. That would be Councilmember Bacon. Is that all right with folks?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I might pop in here and there throughout that meeting. I hope you don't mind, Councilmember Bacon.
And when do they meet?
So that is a TBD. We have to, our next discussion is filling the vacancy that that they left. And then after we have that discussion, we're hopefully going to be scheduling meetings for them.
Clearly not Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to circle back through. We have border review. So again, this is property tax assessment. And I'm looking for somebody to volunteer for that. This is in July, December, and March. And as the city manager outlined, this is kind of an as needed if somebody asks for it. And George, would you have kind of an estimation of what the time commitment is?
I'll do it.
Board of review.
Oh, just kidding. We have a
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. No, that's,
Councilmember Bacon has volunteered. There we go. So BOR, Board of Review, there it is. The next one is Historic District Commission that we wanted to circle back to. I still need a volunteer for that. That meets the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m.
I can take it.
Okay. Councilmember Watson, I have you down for Historic District Commission. And then our last one, of course, is Zoning Board of Appeals. And Councilmember Watson, as you just took on the Historic District Commission, which is a commission that takes a little bit of time commitment on there, I'm happy to take the Zoning Board of Appeals, if that's all right with everybody here. Y'all good with that, Councilmember Watson? Great. Okay. So I think that accomplishes our goal of having a nice long public discussion. It's a little bit messy on who is on each individual commission. City manager, do you have something?
Oh, just do you want to take any action to formalize that or say that these are the appointments or just what your...
Do we need to take formal action on this?
Can we take it once we see it again and see that it matches what we said we were going to do and then approve of it?
We can put on a consent agenda for next time.
Yeah, I think
Perfect. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is filling a vacancy on the Police Oversight Study Committee. This is just an agenda item for discussion because due to Ron Bacon being appointed to the City Council, he's no longer eligible to serve on the Police Oversight Study Committee. So we need to have a conversation on how we fill that vacancy. I will just offer a suggestion, given the fact that we just kind of de facto formalized that Councilmember Bacon would be that liaison. I would be comfortable with him based on the applications we have right now, giving us a recommendation of somebody to appoint, and then doing so at our next meeting. I just, I'm the real conversation here is, do we want to open up applications again for this one spot? Do we want to use the applicants that we've already had? Do we want to, have a public interview process? Like, it's just, we just have to have this conversation. I will say it's a priority for me to get this group going and meeting, which is why I suggested leaving that to Councilmember Bacon, as I think he's a well-experienced person in this area, and I trust his judgment on appointing somebody. Go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
So what's the time frame been since the group was picked and how long?
Things have been a little bit on hold with everything that happened and the resignations. I think that things have just been on hold. And, when we went through this process and appointed new council members, I think we wanted to get started on this group. But of course, we just need to fill this vacancy. I think besides that, we're all ready to go. Is that a fair assessment, City Manager?
I do. I think we want to just, as soon as possible, we can start trying to schedule the doodle polls, or how, I don't know if we've picked a night even, but to have your assistant, Emily, send a poll out to people and try to pick a standard date every 2 weeks, whatever it may be, and try to see how many people we can get for particular dates and move forward.
Yeah. Councilmember Babcock?
Did we send formal letters informing people of their appointments?
I believe so. I'll have to check with Emily on that to see how people were notified.
Okay, thank you.
And then I know we had a couple of members of the commission or that were appointed reach out to us asking us about, updates on timing.
Right.
So
Yeah, having the people that have reached out who are already on and ready to be seated, I don't want to lose commitments from any of the core group that we have already. And there was tons of really, you could almost make two groups out of the group of applicants that came in. It was a very solid applicant group. We really can't lose anyway from that core group of people. So
go ahead.
I'm kind of more comfortable just from being used to seeing appointments happen where maybe there's two decision makers or more. So I think it would be nice if I would support if Ron was working with somebody else and they decided together to maybe bring their recommendation forward, or even if the oversight team figured it out.
Okay, great. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think the way that the ordinance was drafted to create that commission said by appointment of the mayor with the agreement of council. So I think based on what you just said, Aaron, that you would take a recommendation from Councilmember Bacon, essentially you would be making the appointment and we would have to agree because.
Oh, yes, that is true. Although I wasn't in favor of that clause when we were doing it.
But it's unfortunately
There it is.
passed, so that's the way it is. So
yeah, that's
think,
fine. Councilmember Bacon, would you be willing to work with me on that too?
Yeah, I've been ready for this one for a while. There's plenty of time to get going.
And do you see yourself making the recommendation and then getting the group started, or is it possible to begin setting the meetings or getting a grasp on when people are available?
Can we do them simultaneously?
I'll ask the city manager that. That's a good question.
We can start with your assistant asking for like a doodle poll of best nights of the week starting tomorrow. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
To try to start to nail down dates.
Yep.
And I think we want like a reoccurring once a month probably is not going to be enough, right? It may need to be twice a month and like a Thursday night. I mean, a reoccurring date is probably best for people, right?
Only 6 months, so it has to be rather intensive, correct? That's the goal for the
6 months
study.
when they were appointed, but we're a month and a half into that, I think.
All right, so we got it. Yeah, I think twice.
Yeah. So just again, I want to put this question out there because I think it's the only kind of looming question. We have applicants that are there that applied for the commission originally. Is there any desire from any member of council to open this up again to create a new pool of applicants, including the ones that applied before, but also anybody that might be interested, or do we want to just utilize those folks that have already applied? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think to Councilmember Bacon's point that we're already a month and a half into a 6 month long timeline, I would like to move as quickly as possible and also possibly revisit that and see if we can extend that timeline to be another month and a half out, because I'm really nervous that there's not going to be enough time to put the mental labor in that will be expected of that group.
Great, that's fine by me. Councilmember Babcock?
Ditto.
Okay, great. And I only asked the question, oh, go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
Have someone express interest in the interim?
I actually don't know. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
One additional application was received after council interviews, and it was one of the people that interviewed for council interviews.
Yep, I saw it came through maybe a couple weeks ago. So
yep.
Through the system.
Ah, right.
All right, and Councilmember Watson, do you have a follow-up on that?
Yes, how long do you guys see yourself taking to make the recommendation?
My hope would be that we would make a recommendation by the next council meeting. Is that a fair assessment?
We need to have something ironed out if it's me and you working on it this week and ready to present, would be September 8th.
Yep.
September 8th, okay. I do lean more towards opening up to people for even this short period of time. I'm an opportunist, just if someone else is interested. But if that's too time consuming or something you guys can't consider, I understand, but.
I don't want to create a contrast error because it's so late. I think that creates favorability to the new entrants.
Okay.
There's a huge pool of people who are still in the application pool who didn't make the first round. If we want to re-review them, I just don't want to. I think that just psychologically, I don't want to create an advantage for a new entrant. So kind of HR brain.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense.
So I'm hearing a majority of people, at least, that would like to work with the applicants that we have and see that on the next, hopefully next agenda with a recommendation from myself and Councilmember Bacon. Is that a correct assessment? I just need nods. Great. All right. Thank you for having this discussion. So our next item on the agenda is consideration of a lot split application from Nathan Hubble for the property at 16696 Tower Avenue to allow the subject property to be split into 2 new parcels. David Haywood, I believe, is our staff liaison to it. Staff contact, sorry.
There you go.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening. So this is a lot split from Nathan Hubble for the property at 16696. The property zoned RA, residential agricultural, as the properties to the north, south, and east. Property to the west is zoned multiple family. The proposed lot is proposed to be split into 2 lots where they want to split off the southeast corner of the lot, just over ½ an acre. And generally, the proposal meets our standards for for new lots. There's one problem with the remainder portion. That would be the width to depth ratio exceeds our maximum. We allow lots to be 2.5 times their width. The proposed lots 5.36 times the width. So there's that issue. Planning Commission did take action on this on August 12th with unanimous support for approval. I would like to address the comments made by Ms. Johnson earlier in the meeting today about the ownership concern of the property. This dials us back a little bit to 2007, where the vacant parcel was proposed to construct a single family home. And there was at the time a right-of-way issue. Our standard for lots are such that they have to abut on and have permanent access to a road. And there was a gap between the property at that time and the road right-of-way, about 13 feet or so, which was owned by the sod farm. So at that time, apparently the interested parties agreed to transfer a portion of the property to the subject property. And then that was later conveyed to the city. So we own that 47 feet from the front of the lot to essentially the center. And the road is subject to a county road right-of-way. Other than the portion that we own, all of the other properties privately owned in the area, subject to the county road easement. And then with regard to the comment about questioning the ownership of that portion, we do have a record of a recorded deed that transfers the property to the city. So from that and the fact that we issued a building permit in 2007, I would think that issue's been clearly documented. So with that, I would take any questions.
But I was muted. Councilmember Babcock and I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
I think actually Mr. Haywood answered my questions about ownership. So is the gravel portion considered a road? Is it platted as a road? We had someone raise that question earlier, both in comments and in an email.
Right. So the gravel portion of the road is a county road.
Oh, okay.
There's a 66-foot wide easement that goes from the north, I guess the north end of the property south, continues south to the county line, and then is picked up by the next jurisdiction from there. So
One more question. On one of the aerial photos, we saw this parcel backed up to something that I'm guessing, is that the Chandler Apartments, or it was parking lots, and the photo was sort of cut off, but.
Yes, yeah, I'm not that familiar with that development, and I don't know the name of it, but yes, there's a multiple family development on the
But
west.
it's an apartment complex that's that would abut this property.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All set. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Mayor Stevens.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Haywood?
I just wanted to ask a question about the ratio aspect. I think I tuned into that planning commission meeting, so I think I know the answer to this, but the frontage of this property, the part that would be the remaining lot, is fairly consistent with the lot sizes that are already surrounding it. It's just much deeper than the other ones. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's not that it's too small. It's just that it's out of proportion with itself.
That's
and
right.
What was the thinking behind a ratio as opposed to a minimum size?
So a ratio prevents long, skinny lots that tie up land for future development purposes. Rather than seeing a neighborhood develop without a ratio requirement, you would see long, skinny lots that develop, and then it would tie up land for a very, very long time. I think that's one of the concerns about having or not having a ratio. You end up having development patterns that are not characteristic to neighborhoods. And I think our goals and objectives are more to develop neighborhoods than rural.
But because of where this particular property is situated, it's not a parcel that would really lend itself to that type of development in the future. So leaving that very deep aspect ratio is not really meeting that problem. Is that?
That's right. So it's the Planning Commission talked about this, and given its kind of location and proximity to the land to the west, it's not likely that you would see a neighborhood develop from that perspective. And there are other similarly developed lot sizes. There's quite a range of widths and sizes, so they kind of felt like this kind of fit into that.
It did seem from the plat of that neighborhood that there was not exactly homogeneous, that it was pretty organic.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I have two questions that I want to make sure that folks have anything asked if they need to. Great. So we got a couple of emails, one specifically outlining concerns in terms of jurisdiction for public safety folks. Was there any concern on staff's end for that with confusion on this lot specifically?
No, I mean, the comment might have been made, but I'm not sure that was discussed in any detail. Obviously, it's located within the city, so we would have to respond and provide services as such, short of road maintenance. I mean, that would be the county's responsibility. It's on their Act 51 map, so they get money for maintaining that road as such. So,
yeah, okay, great. And then my second question is maybe a little bit more policy related overall. Is it typical to have city councils approve lot splits and be kind of the final decider in this, or is this something more East Lansing specific? That's a big question. You don't have to.
No, I think every jurisdiction does it differently, and in our case, this is how we have it set up, that council gets the last say on splits that create a new lot or change the orientation of a lot, like on a corner, for example, if the split changes it from one side to the other, or if it somehow increases the occupancy or potential occupancy, then that could cause a council review. Lot combinations and lot conveyances, or you're just changing the boundary between two lots, shifting the boundaries, those are done administratively.
Okay, yeah, it's, I've seen a few of these on the agenda since I got elected. We tend to approve them. And this also tends to be an issue area, and there are several issue areas that I'm not an expert in, but that I feel I very heavily rely on staff for their, expert opinion, and then planning commission as well. And so I wonder if there might be a conversation in the future about whether this is the best process, if it needs to come to the city council level, just because historically we have approved these in the past, and I don't necessarily know if it's something that the city council necessarily needs to have control over. But that's of course staff's comfortability. So I'm looking for guidance on there, but that can be a future conversation.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we can come up with a recommendation.
Great.
Be glad to.
Yeah, and again, just on comfortability. So if staff's not comfortable and feels that this should be something that's done by city council, that's okay with me as well. Just honestly.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
To piggyback, when I was on planning commission, we had talked about that list of times where we were in agreement with city council and other times we weren't. Do you know what I'm talking about, David?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering if we could take a look at that, and that might help us too with feeling comfortable about letting planning commission decide the lot splits, or if it's something that needs to come to us regularly.
Sure.
Great. I'm just trying to make sure David doesn't have to stay on the phone with us, until 10:30 every day. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Is there a motion on this, or is there any action that the council members want to take?
Hang on, my agenda went to sleep. Let me see if I can wake it up and I can read this motion properly. Sorry, I was not prepared. Okay. I would make motion to approve the lot split application from Nathan Hubble for the property at 16696 Tower Avenue to allow the subject property to be split into 2 new parcels.
And is that subject to the?
Oh, yes. Yes, subject to the 3 requirements forwarded to us from the Planning Commission.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hood.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that also includes the waiver for the width to depth ratio.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It might not have been in the motion. Sorry.
Yeah.
Would you like to restate your motion, Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure. Let's see here. So I would move to approve the lot split application from Nathan Hubble for the property at 16696 Tower Avenue to allow the subject property to be split into 2 new parcels, waiving the width to depth ratio, and in accordance with the 3 recommendations forwarded to us from the Planning Commission.
Does that satisfy the motion, Mr. Haywood?
Works for me.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Watson. Is there any discussion on this item? Great. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Bacon and Councilmember Watson, I did not hear a vote. If you are, sorry, and let me just clarify. All those opposed, please signify by saying aye.
I'm opposed with comment. Just,
you know what, please go ahead and make your comment.
yeah, just I think that the consideration around the shape of the lot and the concessions that were made kind of prove the point of the people around it. I'm just not completely comfortable with the way it kind of abridges the people around it, in the flurry of late input from the people in that area kind of sways me to not approve.
Gotcha. Any other discussion? Sorry, that is on me. I did not say that. Any other discussion on this matter? All right, I'm gonna redo the vote just for purposes of clarification. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We get a verbal.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes 4-1. Thank you. That is the last item on our agenda at this point. We are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us.